Well, this was a big vote on the House floor. The Republicans stood together, and we had one Democrat vote with us to do the right thing, and that is to fund the government. This was a clean CR. It freezes funding. It's a responsible thing to do, and we're ensuring that troops continue to get their paychecks and TSA agents continue to do their work and be paid, and essential workers on the border and elsewhere are doing their jobs. It's shameful what happened on the Democrat side. They engaged in a misinformation campaign. They put out talking points about the bill on Friday before the bill was even filed, which was Saturday afternoon. They've been lying and misrepresenting the facts about what's in the bill, and the American people can read it for themselves. It's only 99 pages long. We did our job today, and it's shameful that they will stop at nothing. They will suggest that this bill is something that it's not, and they will run out the clock to shut down the government in a desperate attempt to stop the America First agenda. But I will tell you that President Trump and Republicans in Congress will stop at nothing to deliver on that agenda. We are going to continue to work hard. We will continue to stick together and get this job done, and it's an essential one. Now that the government funding bill has been passed out of the House, we send it to the Senate, and it falls on the desk of Chuck Schumer. He is the leader of the Democrats on that side, and he must determine whether he wants to fund the government, do the responsible thing, or whether he wants to shut the government down. And I certainly hope that there are enough Democrats in the Senate who have a conscience, who will do the right thing by the American people and take care of business over there. So, any questions? Anybody?
Are you expecting a shutdown?
I certainly hope not. I believe they'll do it. I believe the Republicans will stick together in the Senate as we have in the House. And I hope there are at least a number of Democrats in the Senate who will do the right thing. If not, this will be on their shoulders, and everybody in America knows that.
Mr. Speaker, on the other legislative undertaking, reconciliation, some senators yesterday suggested that they can get the ball rolling by sometime like August, which is far beyond your timeline.
August is far too late. No, we're going to move that ball a lot faster than that, and we'll be talking with our colleagues and friends, Republican leadership in the Senate about this. They will be working the rest of this week, and then I think both chambers are doing district work next week. When we get back, this will begin in earnest, and we'll have leaders and lieutenants, committee chairs of jurisdiction in both chambers working together to begin that process, to finish up the resolution and move forward with budget reconciliation. That's going to be a very important thing for the country.
A rescissions package, a lot of folks have spoken about that in part with this continuing resolution. What's the status of that?
We anticipate that we will get a rescissions package from the White House as soon as all the calculations are made. The reason we took this step now is to allow for that process to continue to play out. And the DOGE efforts and the other things that are happening in the administration are very important for the American people, because ultimately what we're going to be able to do is downsize the size and scope of the federal government, make it work more efficiently and effectively for the people, and identify these extraordinary areas of fraud, waste, and abuse and eliminate that. So a rescission request from the White House would come over appropriately in the right timing when they have the calculations done, and Congress will do its job there. We are going to deliver for the American people. We're not sure yet. They're working on the calculations, which is the reason we could not include it today. But we do anticipate that. We're going to work hand in hand with the White House, and I want to compliment President Trump on his ability to be so involved that he's watching this step by step. He is determined to deliver for the people, and we are as well. So this is a well-coordinated effort between the White House and our Senate Republican colleagues and House Republicans. And we'll continue to work in that partnership to get this agenda done. Thank you.
So much news today at the end of the day. I'm sorry I was going to go at 8 o'clock, but 8:30 finally got everything put together. And even then, I had to cut stuff off, and I'll save for tomorrow because there's so much. I've never seen a presidency in my lifetime that continues to generate news and headlines almost like on a 24/7 basis. There's so much to go over. So as you heard, Mike Johnson just made that speech and announced that the CR has indeed passed. So from here, it goes to the Senate. Every Republican except one, Thomas Massie, voted yes. Every Democrat except one, I don't know who that is, voted no. Now it goes to the Senate. And here's where the fun part comes. And I was wrong this afternoon. I will always be the first person to say that I'm wrong. They do need 60 votes right now for the CR. But here's where it gets interesting. every Republican, I would almost say all the Republicans, maybe might lose one or two, but they're going to vote for this, which means every radio station, news station, television station, anybody watching this, if it does not pass, it falls completely on the shoulders of the Democrats. There is no other way around it. At this point, all the Republicans have to do is do what they're supposed to and vote, and then just turn and look and make sure everybody else knows it's on these people. And I don't foresee, even though they want to fall on the sword, after everything they said, will they go ahead tomorrow and shut down the government? I don't know. We're going to have to wait. Maybe if they even vote tomorrow, who knows if they try to push it off. But it's on the shoulders of the Democrats. There is nobody else, no way they can blame it on Trump. It's sitting right there. And every news person is going to see it. President Trump, if you were here earlier, he had an extremely busy day, and it continued up until like 5 o'clock or past 5 o'clock when he held that roundtable. Here's a piece from that roundtable.
A lot of investment coming into our country, much more than I've ever seen. Apple is investing $500 billion. IBM was with us yesterday, and they're investing a lot. Just companies all over. I could name them. You've read most of them, many of them. But hundreds of billions of dollars is being invested. That wouldn't have happened if I didn't win the election, number one. And I think, number two, the tariffs are having a tremendously positive impact. They will have, and they are having. We have car companies that are not building in Mexico now. They're building in the United States. Some of them, the plants were already started, and they stopped construction. Now they're going to build in the United States. It was very unfair. They'd build in Mexico and sell them across the border with no tax, no nothing. They'd take away our jobs. They'd close up places in Michigan and all over the country, and they'd build them in Mexico. In many cases, they were owned by China. Built in Mexico, owned by China. And that's all stopped now. They're all coming here. Honda is building a massive plant in different places, Indiana, South Carolina, but also in Michigan, a lot in Michigan. A lot of activity is happening. They're looking all over the place for places, and that's because there is a good spirit, there's a renewed spirit, and also, very importantly, the tariffs they don't want to pay 25% or whatever it may be. It may go up higher, Look, the higher it goes, the more likely it is they're going to build, and ultimately, the biggest win is not the tariff. That's a big win. That's a lot of money. But the biggest win is if they move into our country and produce jobs. That's a bigger win than the tariffs themselves. But the tariffs are going to be throwing off a lot of money to this country. And we've been ripped off for years by other countries, many, many decades. And they were doing the same thing. But I think we'll do it better. And I think we have a bigger advantage because we really are the piggy bank. They weren't.
We are the piggy bank. Yes, that's what people are finding out. You also saw earlier today, if you joined me earlier, that the people up in Canada are waving the white flag. Please don't come after us. Don't tariff the hell out of us. If you follow the money, this isn't about, as Bernie Sanders would say, oligarchy. This is about smart business. And so right now, with everything that's happening, Trump has these people on the ropes. And he's continuing to fire and fire and fire, even through the court system. I have an interview coming up with Kyle Seraphin, and former FBI agent turned whistleblower, who's going to tell you about some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes with the FBI, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino. And so what we're seeing happen at this point is the courts, and this is where I'm leading with this, the courts are pretty much feckless. If President Trump decides to tell these district court judges to go pound sand, there's nobody to enforce the orders. You're going to hear Kyle say that. That's something I've been saying for quite some time. I'm like, hey man, I got to ask you why you're here. If Trump says, no, I'm not doing it, and the judge wants to file a contempt order, who enforces that contempt order? Oh, that's right. Just like I told you, it would be the U.S. Marshals, who run under the auspices of Pam Bondi. Smart. See what's going on here. Donald Trump posted this after everything happened. Let me go ahead and move down here so I can show you this. Here we go. He says, big win for the Republicans in America tonight. Congratulations to all, DJT. So he knows it's a big win. You're going to hear rumblings out there. I'm telling you right now. You're going to hear rumblings from people that the Republicans sold out or that Trump's going to keep the funding going. And don't listen. Too many people have their own agendas going on right now. President Trump just wanted this thing passed. Just wanted to get it over the finish line so now he can really go to work. And the more he goes to work and the more he distances himself from Biden, as you know, today eggs price went way down. Now what are they going to say at the press conferences? So when are the price of eggs going to go down? Well, they're down. Gas, it's down. What else do you have? They have nothing. They may end up doing like Rosie O'Donnell and getting on a plane and moving to England or Ireland, whatever she went to. It is so bad that the only thing that the Democrats are doing are breaking laws. I want you to hear some stuff about this. All they're doing is breaking laws. State Department official arrested. Oh, I thought nobody's getting arrested. Yeah, arrested for leaking secrets paid in Chinese money. Michael Sheena, a U.S. State Department official, has been charged with transmitting classified information paid thousands in Chinese yuan. FBI agents, FBI, who runs the FBI? Oh, that's right, Kash Patel, says he photographed secret documents and sent them to a contact identified as Jason using a covert iPhone. Surveillance caught Sheena accessing classified U.S. diplomatic files before snapping photos of them at his workstation. So they were watching this guy. The scheme allegedly ran from 2022 to 2023 with links to China dating back to his LSU days. Why wasn't this guy arrested? I don't know. Last year. 2024. Why did Christopher Wray and everybody just... We're not going to touch him. You're going to find out that in the interview. Schema was ordered held in jail until trial. No bail. No bail. China has long used LinkedIn and social media for spy recruitment. This case exposes how Beijing exploits weak links inside the U.S. government. Bet you won't see that on MSNBC. Nope, won't see it. How about this one? I told you about this earlier today. I'm not going to go too in depth on it because it's a booming story, and I'm sure there's more information to come out of this. A senior official at USAID instructed the agency's remaining staff to convene at the agency's now former headquarters in Washington for an all-day group effort to destroy documents. They had a destroy party. Come on in, I'll get the pizza. Just destroy everything you can find. It was a group effort to destroy documents stored there, many of which contain sensitive information. What kind of sensitive information would there be for, I don't know, an aid agency? What is so bad that you have to shred it before the feds see it? Because, you're just an aid agency, weren't you? The mass document destruction order marks the latest steps to dismantle the agency. It's just so bad. It's so bad. So I want to show you something. You guys probably won't be able to see it all. But they actually went out and sent a flipping email. It says, destroying physical documents won't erase the truth. Electronic records are almost certainly still recoverable. Yes. Elon's tech wizards should be brought in to salvage what they can. Meanwhile, DOJ and FBI should investigate this as a potential violation of the Federal Records Act. And here is the email sent from the acting executive secretary of USAID. Good afternoon. Thank you for assistance in clearing our classified sales and safes and personnel documents from the RRB. The event will take place all day, beginning at 9:30 today. Please meet at the RRB at 14th Street Lobby at 9:30. However, if you cannot be there at the exact time, your badge will be programmed for access to your work area. I'm sure nobody at the FBI or DOJ had access to see who was actually swiping in. You know, because they're so incompetent. I'm sure nobody like that Doge or the big balls had any idea who you guys were swiping in, because they wouldn't have known in advance you were sending out this email. Shred as many documents first and reserve the burn bags for when the shredder becomes unavailable or needs a break. They're shoving so much crap into these shredders that, hey, keep pushing until the thing backs up and has to be unloaded, then put them in burn bags. That's a lot of effort for an aid agency, isn't it? Just wondering. If you need to use the burn bags, do not overfill and ensure the burn bag can be closed with staples at the top. The only labeling required on the burn bags are the words secret and USAID, BIG, and dark Sharpie if possible. If you need additional burn bags or Sharpie markers, please let me know or the SEC info team know as soon as possible. Because we got to get rid of all this stuff before Trump's people see it. As if they haven't. It was on a server somewhere, right? So you had to push print. So it was logged somewhere, right? Oh my God. And they actually sent out an email to that effect. Oh my God. Breaking. General Michael Flynn calls for Attorney General Pam Bondi to issue arrest after an email showed instructions to USAID employees to shred documents. Tickety tock, Pam. Tickety mother blupping tock. You got rogue people in this department deciding what they're going to do is shred everything so you have no evidence. So hopefully you had someone in the technological department who got all this information before they had their shredding party. Someone need to find out who Shreddy Betty is and tell her, stop this. Why was nobody in this office just, no, you can't do it. We all can see it on social media, and I haven't seen anybody arrested for shredding stuff. This is your chance. This is redemption. The whole Epstein thing. Here's something maybe, I don't know, maybe if you did this, people might say, oh, she's okay. Man. They're shredding documents. That's how bad it is. It's incredible what they're going through at this point. And Trump is just destroying them. Screaming on social media ain't helping the Democrats. Everywhere they turn, it's like bam, bam, bam. Obviously, Trump had a long time to think about what he was going to do. A long time. And now they're out there having to do nothing but shred documents. It's if you didn't see it yourself, you would actually say, man, this is just really, really sad. This is where these people were running our government. These are the people that, we entrusted the government to, and this is how they acted. Absolutely nuts. Absolutely crazy. So let me start with the actual show at this point, because now I've got some things I want to get into, because that's not even the good stuff. It may turn out to be some good stuff later on, but I got some really, really stuff you want to sink your teeth into. So get some of this.
On this vote, the yeas are 217, the nays are 213. The bill is passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
Over the past few weeks, it has been a high priority of mine to identify and bring to light countless issues regarding a Biden EPA gold bar scheme. $20 billion of your tax dollars.
So you know this is Lee Zeldin, who uncovered the $20 billion fraud, of which $2 billion is going or went to Stacey Abrams to put refrigerators in a town that had 200 people in it. So tonight he came out and said, nah, we terminated everything. Give me back my money.
Were parked at an outside financial institution in a deliberate effort to limit government oversight, doling out your money through just 8 pass-through, politically connected, unqualified, and in some cases, brand new NGOs. The money has since been frozen, and the Department of Justice and FBI have been investigating. You may have heard how a group linked to Stacey Abrams received $2 billion after reporting a mere $100 in total revenue the year before. Or how the founding director of the EPA's program dished out $5 billion to his former employer after shaping the legislation that created the program from his White House post. These 2 examples have only been the tip of the iceberg. I'm here to report back to the American people that as of today, I have officially terminated these grant agreements entirely. Not only does EPA have full authority to take this action, but frankly, we were left with no other option. This termination is based on substantial concerns regarding program integrity, objections to the award process, programmatic fraud, waste, and abuse, and misalignment with the agency's priorities, which collectively undermine the fundamental goals and statutory objectives of the awards.
Now, one of the things as he's saying this, and he's admitting fraud, we caught him. Someone needs to walk down the 7th floor. Hey, Pam, got something else for you. Cash, Paige and Cash Patel, come to the EPA office. We just found $20 billion. It's stacking up. It's starting to really starting to stack up. This is starting to get deep. People are shredding documents. Somebody put in the chat here, what's the penalty for shredding documents? I don't even know. I'm not in law enforcement. Someone's going to have to tell me how you're allowed to shred federal U.S. documents. If I remember, a bunch of FBI agents went to Mar-a-Lago because President Trump had secret documents, they said. Just had them. He didn't send out a memo to Melania and Barron and said, get the shredder ready, honey. Nope, he just had possession. And they took him, no, they didn't take him away in cuffs, but you know what happened. So you're telling me low-level people can sit here and go, start feeding the shredder. Just get, oh, it's stuck. Get the burn bags. And what's their penalty? Is CNN going to, camp out, have the cameras ready for the raids? Pam, I've stood by you. I told everybody you're good. You got the goods. Cash. We all stood by you. You can't keep this going. And now Lee's telling you, hey, I found $20 billion over here they were stealing. Come on.
The only way we can reduce waste, increase oversight, and meet the intent of the law as it was written is by terminating these grants. It is my unwavering commitment to President Trump, Congress, and to you. The EPA will once again be an exceptional steward of your tax dollars. I will have it no other way.
Or you can't say he didn't warn you.
Linda?
Okay, so now, as I said, the news keeps happening. President Trump gave the order, and he said, shut it down. Well, he doesn't sound like the chef, but he said shut it down nonetheless. The Department of Education, it's about to be ripped to shreds. Oh boy, 50%.
I hope you do a great job and put yourself out of a job. I want her to put herself out of a job. Education Department.
All right, and a move that seems to portend the beginning of the end for the department that Republicans, going back to Reagan, pledged to abolish. The Department of Education today told staffers to vacate their offices by 6 p.m. because the offices were closing nationwide. The doors are now locked. Workers aren't going to be allowed back into the buildings until at least Thursday. When they do return, it'll be a more cozier group. Nearly
Because even people in my chat are very, they're just going to open again on Thursday. I thought to myself, wait for it. Wait for it. Don't fall for that. You actually saw people in the chat earlier. They're just opening it up against Thursday. You're being a drama queen. And I'm like, so wait a minute. So you think that President Trump had them, put out a memo? Don't get out the building by 6 o'clock. And you can come back on Thursday. You thought that was it? Do you really think Trump was done? Well, like Laura said, it's got to be a little bit more cozy.
half of the 4,100 workers are being cut in what the department is calling a reduction in force. President Trump addressed staff cuts in general today.
We want to cut people that aren't doing the job. We want to keep the right people.
Absolutely.
And I said, I don't want to just say we're going to cut 50%. I want to cut the people that aren't doing the job.
Joining me now, Department of Education Secretary Linda McMahon. Madam Secretary, great to have you in studio.
Before she starts, just to recap, so you heard, you can come back if you got the second memo. What second memo? Well, if you didn't get it, don't worry about it. Don't come back yet. The second memo went out to these people. You're in this group, and if you're in this group, don't come. You're done. Half of the people, done. Just that fast. Which means they'll be running to the lawyers tomorrow and going to some small district court in Guam or something to try and overturn it. In the meantime, the rest of us are like, yeah.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
It's amazing. At this point, you guys, when you see these kind of memos and it's like, hey, everybody get out, we're locking up the building. And you can come back on Thursday. You have to understand who you're dealing with here. Lean in. Come on, what's the punchline, boss? Oh, only those who got that second email can come back. If you didn't get the second email, your door's over here. And he, like Laura said, he told everybody, it's coming. We all heard it. We were waiting for the executive order. Oh, it's coming. Well, today it dropped.
Today. All right. First, welcome to the show, because you haven't been on in studio with me before. Now, is this the first step on the road to a total shutdown?
Yes. Actually, it is, because that was the president's mandate, his directive to me. Clearly is to shut down the Department of Education, which we know we'll have to work with Congress, to get that accomplished. But what we did today was to take the first step of eliminating what I think is bureaucratic bloat. And that's not to say that a lot of the folks, it's a humanitarian thing too. A lot of the folks that are there, they're out of a job. But we wanted to make sure that we kept all of the right people, the good people, to make sure that the outward-facing programs, the grants, the appropriations that come from Congress, all of that are being met. And none of that's going to fall through the cracks.
So that was my next question. So the criteria for keeping that 50% is related to expenditures and key programs?
Correct. Like Congress appropriates the money that is going through Title I, through IDEA programs.
What's that stand for?
Do you know what? I'm not sure I can tell you exactly what it stands for, except that it's the programs for disabled and needs.
Individuals with Disabilities Act, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't know all my acronyms. I've been here for 30 years.
This is my fifth day on the job, and I'm really trying to learn them very quickly.
Right. It's a lot. So reports today said that the buildings were going to be closed for security reasons. What does that mean?
Well, when people left today and they got their notification to take their laptops and their phones home with them, and we didn't want part of the people who were being permanently let go and those who are remaining to some of them show up to work tomorrow morning.
That's standard corporate
practice. So
practice.
It's just standard corporate practice that we just locked the doors and said for those that are coming back, we'll know that they'll be coming back on Thursday morning.
Were people given a chance?
Note to self: if they tell you, yeah, leave the building, but you can come back on Thursday. It's sort of like going to HR and you've been sitting at your desk all day and said, hey, they want to talk to you downstairs in HR. Okay. Oh, you mean they crossed me all day? It's Friday afternoon, and we're like, hey, how you doing, Barry? Hey, how you doing, Susie? And Friday at about 4:45, you call me down and say, hey, we need you to come down to HR. We got a little meeting we got to have. At 4:45, yeah, come on down. We're gonna have talk. We gotta talk. Here's a hint for you in the corporate world: ain't nobody scheduling meetings at 4:45 on a Friday. It ain't happening. So before you head down to the meeting, get your stuff, put it in a box, because you don't know it, but there's probably a couple people outside waiting for you to walk out the office, and they're gonna just go in there and get all your stuff anyway. So these people just thought they were getting the day off. Hell, there's a security problem? Oh my gosh, the security. What security? What security problem is there? I didn't hear anything going off. Okay, I guess we get to leave early. I'll tell you what, that tells you the intelligence level of government employees. None of them saw it coming. They should snake. Hey, yeah, everybody leave. It's a security issue. Don't worry about it. You can come back on Thursday. But then again, I saw a bunch of people in the chat earlier falling for that. I was like, good luck.
Take any personal effects?
They were told that they would be allowed to come back. We would arrange for them to come back and take their personal effects with them and to say goodbye to some folks, too.
Randy Weingarten, you're shocked. I know you two are catching dinner in about 20 minutes, but she actually commented about what's going on here. Watch.
Think about a country whose president basically says, I'm getting rid of education. What does that say about the future?
So just so you know, this is the lady who's the president of the teachers union, and she makes about a good $500,000 a year. And immediately she gets to get on MSNBC last weekend, and she knew something was coming. She just didn't know what day it was coming. And it's like, hey, he's going to do away with education. No, he's not doing away with education. Nobody wants to do away with education. Why do you people lie so much? He's not saying, hey, Johnny, you can never go to school again. It's over. No, you're lying. He's cutting the Department of Education, not the schools, moron.
Many people are so mad about it because they're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So kids of billionaires, they have it.
Let's stay on the facts.
Sorry.
No,
I'm
do
really
not
angry
apologize.
about this.
No, because this
I'm
is what
really
people
angry.
need to...
Well, clearly we're not taking away.
How are these people getting caught flat-footed? She had to have known. She's been hearing about it. She was on MSNBC Saturday, so they talked about it. It's coming. He's going to lay waste to the Department of Education. He said it on the campaign trail. And now you're crying? Quit crying. It's too late. It's too late. I know why she's crying, because she makes $500,000 a year. And she's been grifting off the teachers union. And now there's nobody to save her in the Department of Education. And that long money laundering trail is about to come to a screeching halt. Let's go ahead and donate to the Democrats. Let's collect money from our members, whether they like it or not. And then we'll take that money and we'll give it back to the Democrats. And they'll budget a whole bunch of money for us for them to do the whole thing over and over again. Now, we'll take that off your hands. Nope, can't do it anymore.
Education, the president never said that. He's taken the bureaucracy out of education so that more money flows to the states. Better education is closest to the kids, with parents, with local superintendents, with local school boards. I think we'll see our scores go up with our students when we can educate them with parental input as well.
Well, she's very angry. And over the weekend, I posted on X that it would be nice if Randy were ever angry about the abysmal 8th grade and 4th grade reading and math proficiency. You see those numbers, like 18%, 22% of proficiency or above?
See, Laura's missing the point. She's not in the business of helping kids. That's why they're all freaking out. You think the Department of Education is for the kids, the poor kids, of course. Oh, it's always the poor kids. And the billionaires, they get to send their kids to like good schools, but the poor kids, they're stuck here. But you're not teaching them. They can't read. They definitely can't add. What have you been doing? I feel so bad sometimes when I'm watching television on a Saturday afternoon, because I love college football. And I see this kid who's on scholarship at some big university, and they stick a microphone in his face and say, "So what were you thinking after you scored that last touchdown?" Well, Abby was thinking about, how I was, and I'm like, oh my God. Oh. If that was me, my mom would have probably run out the stands and slapped me upside the head. Are you serious? They're going to put that microphone in front of you and you're going to let the world know I score touchdowns, but I can't add up how many points there are on the scoreboard. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Teachers Union. You've put these kids through, and then God forbid they get hurt. God forbid they don't make it to the NFL. Only a few people make it to the NFL. You got an entire nation of kids who their only way out, it seems, is making it to the NBA or the NFL or something of that nature. And then if they don't make it, where are they? They're 18 or 19 and they have to go learn how to use the Fryolator. Thank you, Randy. That's what you've done to the kids in this nation. That's what you've done. These kids are left with dreams of playing in the big time, and when they can't play in the big time, there's nothing else they can do. Nobody else is going to pay you to score touchdowns. They're expecting you to give some value to a company, and you don't provide any value, and you've been told your entire life you're fantastic, you're great, you're awesome. And then you find out nobody cares anymore. And then what happens? Yeah, you're flipping burgers. You're back in the hood. And you're doing stuff that they do in the hood. Randy ain't coming to see you. See, I'd love for Randy to have said, we've done so many kids so bad. They've gone through the entirety of the system. They can't read. They can't add. And so when they don't make it to the big show, Randy should say, you know what, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you some money and help you do something vocational, teach you how to weld, something. Nope. She goes to the country club and doesn't care. Doesn't care.
In 4th and 8th grade, we rank near the bottom globally on these standards. Well, it's shocking, given how much, and we're putting up a graphic, given how much we spend. It's terrible.
I'll tell you, it's unbelievable. And when you think about high school seniors that are graduating, only 30% of them are reading proficiently. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't read words, but they can't read cognitively. And that's what we're missing. You read to learn up until 3rd grade, and then after that, you're learning to read up until the end of 3rd grade, then you're reading to learn. And if you can't read after the end of 3rd grade, you're going to be behind in your reading. And so that's what we have to focus on.
Well, I say to my own kids, if you don't read, I'm not talking about this, by the way. I'm not talking about phones. I'm like, if you don't read real books, you probably can't write.
True.
You must read to write.
I've
been preaching this gospel. I'm not saying my kids are all that great at it, but it's just terrible. I want to ask you on a personal level. You're a businesswoman, and you've known President Trump for a long time. This is a new world for you, this education.
Let me explain this in case you don't know, because this is, as she's going into this part, when she's talking about being a businesswoman, this is a part where you need to know a little background. If you don't know who Linda McMahon is, she is Vince McMahon's wife. And if you don't know who Vince McMahon is, Vince McMahon has run the WWE. At one point it was the WWF. He runs that empire. She's his wife. She was involved in the management of this gazillion-dollar business that people still somehow watch. And so she knows business in and out. They've made billions with the WWE
department. How shocked were you, if at all, about how swampy it really is?
Well, this is my 5th day on the job. And so, I did serve in the first administration of SBA. But so when I got to the Department of Education, the president said, look, I need an executive, I need a leader in the department. And so when I got there and I found out, I said, okay, we have to identify where the bloat is, where the bureaucracy is, and we're going to start there. Because the programs, so many of the programs are really excellent. We need to make sure that money does get to the states. But we want more money to be able to go to the states. And that's what the president said all along. If we get rid of the bureaucracy, the states will get more. It'll go directly into the states.
Block grants to states.
Perhaps block grants without so many strings and red tape attached to it.
What's your interaction been with Elon Musk during your very brief tenure so far?
Well, it's been excellent. And I did co-chair the transition committee going into the administration, had a chance to work with him there. Have met with him twice, and we have Doge, a couple of the Doge, 3, I think, Doge fellows that are in our department, and I look at it as an audit. If you were in the private sector, this would be an audit, and turns up a lot of things in the audit. Some of you look at it and say, no, we can get rid of that. No, this is the implication that you don't understand, so we can't get rid of that. So I think...
So they have read-only access to the files? To your grant files and so forth?
Well,
budget files?
Yeah, they're not changing any of the budgets of that sort. They're there to find out information, to make suggestions. But, the secretaries and the agency heads are actually the ones who run the departments and make the final decisions.
Well, it's great to have you in studio. You're going to get a lot of protests outside of my old department, whereas my first job in Washington was at the Department of Education. I was only 22, but I had no idea what any of those people did. I just wrote speeches. I was like, I don't know, what are these? But it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You take...
Okay, so she mentioned meeting with Elon Musk. And one of the things you saw today, if you saw this afternoon show, is that Donald Trump bought a new Tesla, and Elon said not only is he going to continue producing Teslas, he's doubling the production. And with everything that's been happening, how everyone's been attacking Elon Musk and burning dealerships, shooting at dealerships, burning Cybertrucks, President Trump took it to a different level tonight. Look at this. Trump labels Tesla attacks as domestic terrorism. 1 hour ago, President Trump has declared that any acts of violence against Tesla dealerships will be classified as domestic terrorism. This statement coincides with recent reports of arson, vandalism, and other attacks on Tesla properties, including incidents involving Molotov cocktails and graffiti. Trump's announcement came as he publicly considered purchasing a Tesla, signaling support for the company amidst these violent events. So, what does that actually mean? Go ahead and burn one up tonight and see what happens. You see, now that destroying a Tesla is an act of terrorism, you no longer get to play nice and then go home. At that point now, you are committing a federal crime. Things going to be different for the the knuckleheads out there. They may not know the classification difference. I don't know if anyone's telling them. I mean, like Cat Turd. I love Cat Turd's name. At this point, the people setting fires are domestic terrorists and should be treated as such by the FBI and DOJ. So here's what's going to happen. The local police can't help you anymore. They catch you doing that, you're going to get the federal government coming after you. That is a huge, huge move. Absolutely monstrous. Now you're a terrorist. Think about that. Think about what being labeled a classified terrorist is and how you're going to put that on your shoulders. Good luck with all that. Yeah. Ooh, big trouble. Big trouble in Little China. Really. Go ahead. Make my day. You better call whoever's telling you to do this stuff before you do it this time, because this isn't like Barney Fife going to put you in jail for a day and then let you out and then dismiss the case. You see, very few of these people ever get prosecuted. They may get charged, they may get put in a pokey for the night, and then they go on to basically wreak havoc another day. Not now. Not now. Where was that? That was so good. FAFO, can you hear the cell doors closing? Yeah, you're a terrorist. You are a terrorist. Let that just sink in a little bit. Trump is such a boss. Yeah, exactly. Act Blue, be careful because, okay, Carla, you're onto something here. Carla, you're onto something. Carla says, Act Blue better be careful. Setting fires and destroying property because of their politics. Now understand this. If little Johnny is a complete blue-haired nut and he does it, well, he's just a single terrorist. He's not part of a cell. Now, let's imagine that little Johnny gets out there and he wants to, burn up a couple Teslas, but he's getting funded by somebody. And somebody's sending him the money so that he can buy the Molotov cocktail, so he could, get to wherever he's going to. He can go to an ATM and pull some money out of the bank. Do you think how many crimes did I just say? Well, you can start off with conspiracy because there's a plan. You can add into that bank fraud because now you're helping use money to, be a terrorist. And those crimes will stack very quickly. Because on top of that, you're going to have, was anybody hurt? Was there damage to a certain dollar? Oh, man, you're done. You're heading over to the Chateau d'If, which if you don't read, because Randy Garden didn't teach you, you have no idea what I just said. So you're like, oh, you're done. You're absolutely done.
About when we're talking about the cuts that Doge is bringing about. How are they feeling about
Yeah, this to me was one of the more shocking figures that I saw. Made me go, wait a minute, hold on.
Why do these people continue to be shocked? How many people do you know and that you come across on a daily basis like, you know what? I'm pretty happy they're stealing my money. I can't wait till April 15th to give them more money to steal. Oh, by the way, the people at USAID are shredding documents and putting them in burn bags because they don't want you to know how much of your money they've been stealing. But the guy in CNN here is like, oh man, I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
1 second. Whoa! Americans on Trump and Joe's efforts. Musk and Doge should influence government spending and operations. Look at this. 54%. The majority say that he and they should. How about approve of Trump trying to cut staff at government agencies? Again, you get a majority here. 51%. So yeah, Elon Musk might not be that popular, but these cuts and the idea of spending cuts, at least within the federal government and cutting at government agencies, that actually has majority support. I was truly surprised by this, Kate, but the numbers are the numbers.
Well, there is a...
If you're surprised by these numbers, do yourself a favor. This weekend, leave New York or Washington. Try to find someplace where you can talk to people who don't live around the Beltway. People who are out there working for a living, who have to do so much just so they can pay their bills on April 15th. And then just ask them. Go into a barber shop. Hey, man, are you okay with the government stealing all this money and sending it to Ukraine and everywhere else? Hell no. But you're surprised. Okay.
View that cuts across Democrat and Republican of people thinking that Washington is too big, bloated federal government, waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, those are drain the swamp is what people run on over and over again. How do they feel? What do they think they're actually cutting?
Yeah, what do they think they're actually cutting? Democrats want to argue that the type of spending that Musk is cutting is mainly necessary programs. But that comes in at just 36%. The wasteful spending actually wins the plurality here.
Okay, so I don't know who his source is, but I'm thinking the blue-haired nose rings, people who like to play in other people's sports, who just want to have, craziness. 36% still today, you're telling me, think that they're getting necessary programs cut. So, again, we have more Randy Weingarten students who have no idea what the hell they're talking about, who are being gaslit by the media.
42% according to a recent Washington Post Ipsos poll. And I think that is the reason why you see that when it comes to Musk and Doge, you see, in fact, the majority believe he should have some influence because they believe, the plurality believe, that he is cutting wasteful spending, not necessary programs that Democrats are arguing.
Yeah. And then just lastly, Van, in terms of Democrats and where they go from here, this last week we did see them some people try to protest during the president's address and then House leadership getting onto them, other Democrats calling them out. They still seem to be wandering around trying to figure this out. What's your take?
Can we ask another question? Do I have to talk about my own party? Can we talk about Ukraine or something? No. Look, man, we're screwed. I mean, we don't know.
You may have seen this making its rounds, and I just felt I needed to clip it today because it's so true. You are so screwed. The CR passes. I dare you to have some Democrats try to fight it in the Senate. You're destroying the Department of Education. Trump's naming Tesla-type terrorists out there. What you guys got? You got nothing.
Democrats don't know what to do. This is a nightmare. Somebody like Donald Trump, we thought we'd at least have Hakeem Jeffries in the speaker's chair to hold him back if we didn't have Kamala in there to do the right thing. Listen, the Democratic Party is going through a massive set of internal crises. You have a party that got trapped two ways. One, defending a broken status quo that nobody likes because they thought that Donald Trump was going to make it worse. But when you're defending the status quo, you're going to lose. And then offending most people in the country, calling everybody sexist and racist and transphobic and every other name, and then saying, please follow us. That's not a good strategy, folks. Defending a broken status quo and offending most of the country turns out is not as popular as my party thought it was going to be. And so it's going to take a while for people to get it figured out. I don't like talking about this. I'd rather be beat up. Can you give me something I can beat up Shermichael about? I don't want to talk about my own party.
I know. It's a tough question.
How bad is it when CNN is now openly laughing at the Democrat Party? Hey, just throwing their hands up in the air going, we got nothing. We absolutely have nothing. And there's nothing for them to look forward to. What are they going to do? I mean, you listen to some of the stuff these people say. There's nothing on the horizon. There is literally, all you can do is hope for doom and gloom for America. You want America to lose. You don't want Ukraine stopping the war. You don't want the border cleaned up. You want the worst for America. You want a recession. You don't think people notice you rooting against them? There's nothing that the Democrats do except talk about the poor peoples. There's nothing that they talk about improving your life. Nothing. And so now it's a joke. It's a joke of epic proportions. And if Donald Trump can get Pam Bondi and Kash Patel to seriously get off their asses and do something, I don't know if these people can ever win again, or at least not for any time soon. I'm about to do this interview with Kyle Seraphin, former FBI agent, federal whistleblower, and he's going to be talking about what Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and how they blew some things, and what Dan Bongino might have to look forward to right after this quick message. I don't know your exact situation, but if you're like the thousands of homeowners American Financing talks to every month, you're struggling to keep up. barely making ends meet, drowning in high interest debt. And it's not your fault. Life got more expensive, inflation hit hard, and you're still carrying credit card balances with 20% or more interest rates while your mortgage sits untouched. You're ignoring the one thing that could turn it all around for you, your home. And this is where American financing can absolutely help you. Would you trade 10 minutes for a shot at saving an average of $800 every single month? Because that's exactly what homeowners are doing when they call American Financing. A simple, no obligation call could change everything. They have a team of salary-based mortgage consultants. They don't work on commission. So there isn't any incentive to put you into a loan that doesn't make sense for you. And there are no upfront fees to find out how much you can save. Don't wait. Call American Financing today and start feeling that relief. That's 888-976-5555. That's 888-976-5555. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Barry. All right, everybody, I got a great interview scheduled here for you tonight. I've got Kyle Seraphin, a recovering FBI agent and a federal whistleblower. Kyle, how are you tonight? And thank you for coming on.
I'm doing very good, and I appreciate you having me. Thanks for having me on.
So I had one of your buddies or compadres on a while back, and it was just amazing. Steve Friend, I know you know him, and it was just the amount of information that he told us was incredible. So you're coming from a different aspect. I'm going to jump right in. One of the things that happened most recently was the whole Pam Bondi debacle, where she handed out the binders and she told everybody, here's the files, and it was 200 pages. And it wasn't until after it blew up that she, had to come on television and tell everybody that there's something wrong. I'm a former football player. And when my coach had a game plan, our game plan would be this thick, and he would decide which plays he was going to run. How could Pam Bondi, the head of the DOJ, which is the hierarchy that the FBI is under her, how could she not know what level of files there were wrapped around Epstein?
The short answer is I have no idea. I don't know how you would ever get into that situation. It doesn't make any sense, right? She made this sort of statement, and it seems made for television in my experience, because she's talking about paper files like they came in a binder or that someone was driving a truckload of papers over. It's 2025. Yeah. And now we can imagine there are paper versions. There are probably some things that are evidence. There are things that are physical. But the FBI is like every other law enforcement agency at this point. They have digital files. It's right. Like a flash drive. When I used to make pull off discovery for the United States Attorney's Office, we'd bring it over on DVDs like you'd expect, because it's 2025. So I don't know how she decided that she was going to say she had the complete files and she didn't have access to them. It does show you a bigger issue.
Yes.
Part of it is a messaging issue. This was a completely unforced error. If you had gotten in there and said, look, I know we promised you day one that we were going to give you all the Epstein files, and that's what we're really committed to, but here's what's more important. We want to get you our prosecutions. We want to get indictments, arrests, prosecutions, and convictions. That's what we're really set on doing. So we're going to do it in the most expeditious way possible. We kind of were making some promises we can't back up at the moment, but let it be known, we've created a task force. We've taken the right people. We've given them access to the files, and they are going to be digging on this, and we're going to start announcing arrests forthwith. Like, look forward to that. I can't give you all the details yet. People would go, okay, yeah, we understand that. Sure.
And I'm in South Florida, so I am familiar with her work down here and with the various sheriff's department. And she always came across as someone very professional, very proficient in what she was doing. I was completely surprised that it seemed as though she got caught with her pants down, per se. Who would she have been leaning on? This is before Kash Patel was confirmed. Who would she have been leaning on to show her, here's where this is, here's where the bathroom is, here's where the coffee machine is? Could you put somebody in an attorney general position who didn't know where anything was?
I mean, it takes a little while to get familiar with the organization, and that's obviously the case. But they actually did have a transition team. You had a deputy attorney general, the DAG, who's going in there. That's the person that's calling all the shots over at FBI and putting those personnel into place, moving the acting director around, moving the acting deputy director. So there was a transition team. I think they got snowed. I think that she got snowed. I think Cash actually got snowed a little bit. I think that what people are seeing, and they don't really have an instinct of it, but if you've worked inside that agency, you get it. The DOJ is a status quo sort of organization. Donald Trump never ran it. He was never the boss of the DOJ. He put an attorney general in, but the people that ran it were always the people that have been there, and they've spent 20 years there. So the people that run the FBI and the DOJ are not the people that you see as the director. Generally speaking, the director of the FBI gets run by the FBI, and that is currently happening right now, I think, as well. This is the uphill battle. I'm a little bit hopeful. I'm a little bit I'm cautiously optimistic that Dan Bongino is going to get in and move some momentum, but the status quo is stagnant. It is the reason we call it a deep state. I actually think that's the wrong word. Deep state sounds kind of sexy. It sounds like people are like handing off files in dark places, and they're going into parking garages, and they're doing kind of the deep throat meeting, which, by the way, Mark Felt, he was the deputy director of the FBI, and he was deep throat. So there is like a kind of a piece to that. But what I think is really going on is that you're dealing with the administrative state. That's more accurate. This is people who have been there for a long time. They know the ins, they know the outs, they understand how the policy works, they know where to screw people. They can brief you on something and never actually come through on it because their name's not going to be the one that's in the public looking stupid. And so I think they got played a little bit, and I think it's worth acknowledging. She should probably come out and get in front of it instead of doing a bunch of Fox News hits. Just say, look, I didn't realize how deep the corruption in this agency is. I didn't realize how aggressive the status quo is fighting to stay the same. And we're going to go out there and work against it. We're going to do it in good faith, and we're going to be transparent where we can be. But some of the stuff we do, criminal prosecution, you don't see all the evidence in every criminal prosecution. You're not going to see it until we take it to trial. And so if we're going to actually charge and convict people, some of that stuff's going to stay in our pocket until we actually have to release it. And so we can't show you everything. And we made a false promise there, but we're going to do it in good faith that we're going to make the prosecution. If she said that, she'd be forgiven immediately. What they're doing instead is they're hoping that the next media cycle or the blow up in the White House with Zelensky is going to cover for them. And it kind of did. But, I see it online all day long. People are like, hey, where are the Epstein files? They're doing that Bill Murray memes that say, today's another day without the Epstein files, like Groundhog Day style. And so Americans, they've been promised something and they want to see it. And I want to see it for them. But I think they just need to be honest about what they can and can't expect. And then you'll have a much better outcome.
So a question for you, as you were saying, you were talking about the corruption. How corrupt is it? I mean, because those of us looking from the outside, we saw Comey, we see the name guys that you see on television. How deep do the layers go in terms of people who have nefarious plans for Trump and America?
Well, let's start at the real beginning of the problem. A lot of people don't know what the FBI is.
Right.
And if you don't know the answer to that question, then you're going to have a hard time understanding anything about what corruption is, because corruption is probably not the right word for it. It's an entity that is not what people expect it to be. The FBI is an intelligence agency. Now, everyone assumes it's law enforcement, and that's probably, 30% or 40% of what they do. But the FBI considers itself an intelligence agency first, and they say so in the document that tells the FBI how to do business. That document's called the Dialogue. So there's this book. It's thicker than the Bible. It's, when we had the COVID shortages, I told people you could take the paper dialogue home and you could use the paper to wipe your butt if you ran out of toilet paper, and it would last a long time because it's really, really thick. And it says FBI is intelligence agency first, and then FBI is law enforcement agency. So it has dual hats. Once you understand that, then you have to understand what these cases look like. And intelligence cases are not the same as criminal cases. And they happen sometimes simultaneously. And when you understand that the FBI is spinning off cases into Americans that are not predicated on criminal acts, they're predicated on the need for information. That's what intel agencies do. That scares the crap out of a lot of people. They don't realize that we're talking about something and they don't end. I had intelligence cases that I inherited when I first started working for the Bureau. This was going back to like December of 2016. So I'm freshly out of the academy. I get assigned to a counterintelligence squad in Washington, D.C. And I had cases that were opened up and like signed off into authorization by Peter Strzok, who people will recognize his name. He was the supervisor that opened them. They're 8-9 years old. There's never an allegation that anybody that is involved in this case had any criminal activity. We're simply investigating them because we want to know more about them. That is antithetical to what most people think the FBI does. It's maybe what they think the worst case scenario is. It's every day. And so when I can open a case on you because you met somebody who was a Chinese spy when you were in grad school, and you're not even friends with that person, but maybe you had a Facebook message or two, And we can open a full case and pull your bank records, and we can pull your toll records and find out who you've been texting with or calling. When I can find out everything about you and drag your entire social media and try to find all your connections there. And maybe I find someone that has another connection with that person. So then I open a case on that person.
Wow.
This is what the FBI is doing. And so intelligence cases are like a circle. They just spin off more circles, like a whirlpool or an eddy in the water. A criminal case is linear, and they're not nearly as scary, because what happens is a criminal activity takes place. We try to figure out who does it. We go out and get evidence that they did, and then we go and take them to trial, or they plea out, and that's the end. Right? You just don't nearly have the long-term implications. So the FBI became this entity after 9/11. And once you understand that the post-9/11 FBI is very different than the pre-9/11, and more importantly, the post-Obama FBI is a totally different animal, because in 2016, at the tail end of Obama's term, he changed the authorization that enables the NSA to do what's called domestic collection. The NSA is authorized under this executive order called 12333. And under that, for the first time, the FBI in late 2016 was able to access what's called raw FISA. FISA is like me looking into your email. Like I open up your email the way you open up your email. You don't want that. But I can see your spam. I can see your regular email. I'll see whatever's going on there. And if you're collected on in FISA, previously what happened is the FBI would have to go to the NSA and say, hey, we'd like to know something about this person. And you'd get this redacted version, what they call minimized. So you'd look at that, and then you'd have to figure out who that person, okay, well, who's the person that you wrote person number 1 in? But as it is right now, the way it's set up since Obama got in, it's like, oh, well, that's Barry Cunningham. I just know who he is. And he's talking to Kyle Seraphin, and he's emailing with Ashley. And we can see all those things. And that didn't used to exist. So even the FBI post 2016 is different. And obviously, it seems like that stuff was set up to go after Donald Trump. So the entire agency for the last 8 years has both had the willingness, the toolbox to do so. And then most importantly, the people that got promoted, they're all in place. It takes years to become a senior level member of the FBI. So we're talking about people that everybody down from the director is, the top SESer, special senior executive service. Then you got the deputy director. Then you got this person called the ADD. Then you've got 7 people called the executive assistant directors. They take years to get to. Then you've got people below that called the deputy or the assistant directors, then the deputy assistant directors, then section and unit chiefs, and then the special agents in charge. And every single one of those people take years and years, and they are all brought up in the same management culture that is currently there. And all of it essentially is rotted. And we know that because of what happened during COVID. They all said yes when there was probably a constitutional question there. And so there should have been a pause where they said, hey, we're a law enforcement agency. We're an intelligence agency. We answer to the DOJ. We understand what the Constitution means. Maybe we take a little breather on this and we don't enforce a mandate and kick everybody out.
Right.
Maybe we just say, listen, it's going to get settled in the courts. And when it does, we'll just handle it then. Instead, what they said is we're going to push full bore because what we require is compliance. So we got to see in 2020 and 2021 what the FBI was made of. And it's the same thing that Donald Trump was alleging. And it's the same thing that a lot of us have actually been saying publicly. My first whistleblower activity happened in 2017, like 1 year into being in the FBI. And I did it the entire time that I was in. I was just talking to an attorney earlier today, and I was like, oh, I did a whistleblower activity in 2019 about how they were screwing over people on payroll. They wouldn't pay overtime, even though they were scheduling shifts. So it just has all these layers, and some of them are procedural and they're very pedantic and boring. And some of them are really sexy and scary because they involve tools that people have heard of, FISA 702 and things like this, and some of them involve like raiding the former president's house. And so we can go as deep as you want, and everything is on the table at this point because we all look at it and we go, how corrupt could it be? It could be all the corruption. It doesn't mean that it is. There might be a better explanation, but they've lied continuously, even to the point of something simple like, hey, how come you don't have the cell phone data for the pipe bomber from January 6th? And they're like, oh, it was corrupted. And then you find out when Donald Trump gets into office, Congress is asking the same question. They go, hey, where's the pipe bomber phone records? And the phone company goes, oh, we have them. Yeah, there's no problem.
Yeah.
And then you start thinking, well, what the heck were they lying for? And so we don't know the answers to these questions, and we don't know if it's incompetency or malfeasance, but neither is acceptable from what they like to call the premier law enforcement agency in the United States.
So if you, Kyle Seraphin, were named that you got Kash Patel's job, you're the new director of the FBI, what's day one for you?
Resign. I don't want to do that job. That sounds terrible. No, we got to get really deep and really wide. So this is the thing, and I hope that this is why Dan Bongino's appointment is going to be maybe a sea change, and maybe it brings a momentum change. The FBI is a static agency. It is very good at tying up. Imagine like the tar baby. That's what I'm trying to remember. There's like an old fairy tale there, right? Where the more you mess with the tar baby, the more it gets you slowed down. You end up covered in brambles, not being able to move. What needs to happen is you need to maintain inertia and forward momentum. And I don't think Cash actually got that going in. I think he ended up getting done what they always do. They take the FBI director and say, look at all these cool toys we have. Look at all these cool things we do. Look how important we are. And you're in charge of all of it. Isn't that cool? By the way, here's the plane. Go fly around in that. And it gets people distracted enough. If I'm day one in charge, first thing I'm doing is every single person that I mentioned. The deputy director would have to be an appointee that we bring on, but the ADD, the EADs, the ADs, the DADs, like all the way down the line, and pretty much a bunch of the special agents in charge, I'm moving them all to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
I don't want to move them to Montana or Alaska because I like Montana and Alaska. Those seem really nice. I'm moving them to Puerto Rico because there's tons of crime there, and go fight crime. And by the way, every single senior FBI manager, every FBI agent, and every intel analyst all have a mobility agreement. So they can be moved at the pleasure of the director. So you just got orders. You have to report in Puerto Rico in 90 days, or you can retire. Take your pick. And I'm going to create a bunch of vacancies at the top. That's what I would do. The next thing I would do is I would send out a memo to every single special agent in charge that's still there. And I would say to them the following: please give me, by statistical accomplishments in a actionable and measurable way, give me the top 3 criminal agents you have and the top 3 national security agents in counterterrorism and counterintelligence. Send me all of those names. Then I want your top 5 supervisors that have been there the longest, and I want their most recent climate surveys, which is like an internal survey on how they are as far as managers.
Okay.
Then I've got a pool of probably like 600 to 1,000 people. And I'm going to fill my management with people like that. I would interview them for their interest, their ability to come and do the job, and whether or not they had the background that I'm looking for all the positions. But all of those senior positions should basically be like an hourglass that's got all the sand in the bottom. We should flip it. So your GS-13, your brick agents, which is what people always call rank and file. We call them brick agents in the FBI. Those people need to be stepping in and running programs, running sections, running units. They need to be the people that run the FBI. You need to have the people that are the best managers that were actively avoiding spending time at headquarters, that were staying in the field because they wanted to be near the work and where the cases were. We're going to say, hey, look, we need you to serve America. We need you to step in. But by the way, there's no reason why you couldn't do a headquarters job from wherever you live. You could live in Florida. You could live in Omaha. In fact, even better, because now you have access to it. We learned during the sort of the COVID shutdowns that everybody was able to work in some fashion remotely. So why don't we do that? Why don't we allow headquarters to not just be in Washington, D.C., let it be wherever the people are. And then I would get every single person that I could at the FBI headquarters to not live in D.C. anymore. I would shut down the Hoover building, and I would move everybody to a place that America has already spent $2 billion building. It's a place called Huntsville, Alabama. It's at Redstone Arsenal, which is a military base. And they have room there for thousands of FBI employees, and it is a headquarters delineation. It's like headquarters part 2. It's much bigger, and it's in a red area. And more importantly, it's outside of Washington, D.C., and it's outside of what we would call kind of the triangle.
Right.
What happens with the FBI, and a lot of the corruption, the morass happens, is that people need certain jobs at headquarters in order to promote, and they need certain jobs in the field offices to promote. The worst case scenario is somebody can move to somewhere like Alexandria, Virginia, right across the river, right on the other side of the Potomac of D.C., or maybe they live in D.C. proper. They can get a job at headquarters. They can promote into the Washington field office where I used to work. They can promote out of the Washington field office back into headquarters, and they can ratchet like a ping pong ball all the way to the top of the bureau and never leave and see what America is really like. So they think Washington, D.C. is America, and that is the opposite of the case for all of us who have lived anywhere else. And they can also do Baltimore too, because Baltimore is also within that 50-mile radius.
So you know all this, everything you just said in the last couple minutes. Do you think Pam Bondi knows it, and do you think Kash Patel knew it? And if they did, why didn't they do just that?
So the answer to the first question is yes, they do know it, because we put it together on a slide deck. Me and Steve Friend, who you mentioned earlier, and a couple of others, we all got together, including some retired folks that spent more time in the headquarters units, and we laid out a roadmap, and we said, these are all the things that need to be done if you want to be successful. And we want you to be successful, so we want you to know this. Do you need to use the people that we recommend? No, but they're good people. Do you need to use the techniques? Probably, because these things are pretty well thought out, and we know the inside traps.
Right.
Why they didn't do that? I have no idea. I imagine that there are some logistical concerns that were not foreseen, but my concern is they did the same thing that they've done to every single FBI director, because the FBI is running the director almost always. The director doesn't get to run the FBI.
Wow.
And if that's the case, And that's always been the case. Usually what happens is the deputy director is the most powerful person in the FBI, and the director is a figurehead.
Okay.
That is almost, other than J. Edgar Hoover, you basically, and maybe Louis Freeh, who was a former FBI agent, so he knew the game. He disbanded a lot of the headquarters stuff. He did a lot of what I just said.
Right.
All of the stuff that Louis Freeh did actually got reversed under Mueller. And then Jim Comey continued it. And Chris Wray continued it. So for at least the last generation of FBI employees, what they've seen is that they can control the director by giving him access. They call it bubble wrapping. There's actually a term for this. And I've actually heard Chris Wray say it on a conference call where he said, look, I'd love to come out and talk to the real people of the FBI, but they kind of have me bubble wrapped here as the director. And so then he'll go out and he'll meet the real people of the FBI, and he'll go to the field office and they ask him questions like, what's your favorite ice cream? And is it hard getting recognized going grocery shopping when you're at the grocery store with a protective detail? And you're like, get rid of this BS. This is nonsense. These are all vetted garbage questions, because they never really see the real people in the FBI, like a guy like me who's going to ask a real question.
Yeah, I mean, I want people that are going to ask real questions. So Monday, Dan Bongino leaves this podcast. He heads up to Washington. You said the deputy director ends up doing more work than the actual director. What do you foresee his role being, and is he going to be able to, crack some eggs and actually get some things done?
Yeah, I hope so. I don't know. Dan's going to have a difficulty because almost always the FBI deputy director comes from within the bureau. And so usually that's why I can see why you would not want that this time around. As I gave you an example earlier, the Deep Throat example, like there's been some deputy directors that were really nefarious characters, took down Nixon, for example. So you're in an interesting spot where we're going to have a director who always comes from the outside. You're also going to a deputy director who comes from the outside. So you need local tour guides. I have described this as sort of like a beach landing, like landing at the beaches at Normandy, like taking a country by force and doing an amphibious landing. Right. And in order to do that, you need to grab territory. Or you can look at Afghanistan. Look what the I can't remember what group it was, but I think ODA 555 actually landed in Afghanistan and became like the horse soldiers or the donkey soldiers. And they took over Afghanistan by force very rapidly.
Right.
Dan's going to need momentum. He's going to need to go in there and cut some throats. And I actually heard a couple of different people, I think it was Kevin O'Leary talking on Fox the other day, that when you go into a reorg and aggressively take over a business, you'll cut back 20% more than you need to, and you got to hire them back later.
Right.
It's actually better to lose more ground, to send more people out to retirement or transfer them all down to Puerto Rico. It'd be way better to do that. And I keep saying Puerto Rico because, like I said, I like other places. And also, it's off the mainland. You can send them to Guam, too. I don't care. Just get them outside of the U.S. where they're going to cause problems, because these people have influence and they have friends and they have networks, and they're going to go out there and be subversive. So you need to remove all of that attitude where we think we're going to run the bureau and the deputy has to come in and establish order fast. It's going to be very difficult. It can be done.
With everything that's happening, again, putting yourself in that director's chair, was it a mistake to even promise that the Epstein files would be day one? Because when I heard President Trump talk, he acted as if there were other, which makes sense, other priorities before the Epstein file. Epstein's dead, supposedly, and the other woman, she's in jail. So those files, whatever they are, they're going to be there. But we've got some more pressing needs. We saw them go ahead and go after the guy from Afghanistan and all this other stuff. Was that the first mistake by saying this is our priority, going after Epstein files?
So I always tell my audience that it's kind of like chasing a dot on the ground with a laser pointer. I let people kind of know that we're really susceptible to this with the news cycle. If you give us a shiny object, we want to chase it. But our goal should be not to watch the dot, but watch the hand that's moving the dot. Yeah, the Epstein files, they're a shiny object. They're totally unnecessary. They became a media spectacle. It could have been really easy for them to say, listen, here's how we're handling the Epstein situation. We promised you day one. We're naming a task force. We're going to give you a little bit of details on it soon, but we're going to sequester these people. We're going to put them in a place where you don't see them, where they're out of the news so they can do their job. Because here's what we do know about the Epstein situation. Supposedly, there were like 250 victims, which means there are probably like dozens, if not hundreds, of perpetrators, what we would call subjects.
Yeah.
There should be spin-off cases, or there should be what we would call sub-files. It could be either way. Either you'd send it out to individual field offices, like you'd go to Albuquerque and say, hey, there's some victimizers here, there's some abusers, so you guys can open a case. Here's the information we have. Do what you want. Or you could quarterback it from the same place, whether it be New York, whether it be in Washington, D.C., whether it be in Miami, maybe, because he had some residences in various places. And you could run that case from there, and you could send leads out to the agent, say, hey, will you go interview this person? We want to do this. Or will you go do some surveillance? Will you go get some documents from this bank? And they could run it all out of one office. But we saw it with January 6th. They got no problem opening up a bunch of cases on a singular event.
Mm-hmm.
There should be lots of Epstein cases that are all the people that were abusers, right? And if you wanted to do a task force, and if you wanted to just get it out ahead of it and say, look, we're doing this thing, it's going to take a little while, we're going to do it right, we're going to do it by the book, that means our people are all going to be leaving the area, and we're not going to tell you until we start coming up, and we're going to do some press announcements when we have arrests.
Right.
You'd be fine with that. I would be fine with that. America wouldn't be upset, like, hey, you're stringing us along. In the same way that Kash Patel went on, podcasts and said, day one, I'm going to shut down the Hoover Building and turn it into a museum to the deep state, right? You took that as hyperbole. That was an attitude. That wasn't like an action plan, right? And so if that's the case, like, we're not going to be totally knocked off by that. We go, okay, fine, no big deal. Like, we get it. You're going to have to do something at headquarters. What we expect to hear is there's a lot of blood on the floor, because you've slit a bunch of throats and a bunch of people that were doing the wrong thing are now gone. Mm-hmm. Their careers got axed. That's the right answer. Some of them should be prosecuted because there's definitely some crime in there. I guarantee it. Even if it's just time card fraud and lying to Congress. Like, I 100% can guarantee you that there are senior executives within the FBI that have broken federal law and have either perjured themselves in front of Congress, perjured themselves by suborning it and asking other people to lie on their behalves. And we actually have some documentation of that in the congressional record from the Weaponization Committee, because they've lied about me. I know for a fact the things that they said about me are factually inaccurate. At one point, there was a senior executive. She was what's called an EAD. So she was like number 4 in the Bureau. Okay. Mm-hmm. She went in front of the Weaponization Committee and she claimed that I was on a firearms shooting range and I shot at the head of a fellow agent who was downrange while we were all hands off guns, and nothing happened to me. Which is absurd if you've ever been around a shooting range. It's also absurd if you've ever been around me. Like, I'm a gun guy. I've got 100 guns in this house right now. So to think that I'm going to draw a weapon I'm not scared of the ATF. They've already been here. Okay. If I'm going to draw a weapon and take a shot at somebody, it's going to be justifiable and it's going to be legally authorized. I'm not going to shoot at one of my friends down the range because I'm being funny. Yeah. Like, I'm going to jail for that. That's felonious assault with a deadly weapon at the very least. I'm ending up in handcuffs. So we know that they lied about stupid things like that. I also know they lied about time cards, which means they lied to Congress about what the FBI was spending their time and resources on. Mm-hmm. So these are not non-serious things. These are felonies, and they could be pursued. So that's what we would like to see. And if he had done that instead of, like, promising the Epstein binder thing, we wouldn't be having this conversation about this. We'd be talking about, victory instead of that. We're now wondering if we're going to get enough momentum to actually get any movement forward.
Let me ask you a question. Ghislaine Maxwell is in jail, supposedly, somewhere. How did she get convicted without, she was I'll say this nicely so YouTube doesn't go crazy. She was the purveyor of goods, and these goods got sold or given to other people. How did the people receiving the goods, how is there not a single person, which they must know, who procured illegal goods, and none of them have been ever arrested?
There's no reason for it. There's no reasonable reason. Yeah, unless people are willingly not prosecuting, willingly not investigating, or as something that happens, and this is the danger, this is the corruption we talk about. Mm-hmm. There are cases that are actionable and they are prosecutable, and the DOJ will come in and say, sometimes it's the United States attorney in a certain district. Sometimes it's what we call DOJ Maine. That's the Washington, D.C. based DOJ. And they'll come in and say, no, this is not a priority. I have friends whose whistleblower activity was going to members of Congress and saying, we have actionable information. We can criminally prosecute Chinese individuals for breaking American law on U.S. soil, and we have the ability to put them in jail. We have a lock-solid case on this, and that's not very common, by the way. In the counterintelligence space, espionage or, what they call economic espionage, it's just not very common. Counter-proliferation charges, you don't usually get to prosecute that. And so they had these cases, and they went to Congress and said, look, we tried to do this, and DOJ Maine came in and said, no, that's not a priority of this administration. Wow. That was under Joe Biden's administration.
Wow.
So if that's the case, and if somebody comes in and says, yeah, you've got a really lock-solid case on this person, or you want to interview this person, but we don't approve it, we're not going to prosecute. That could be a DOJ decision. And that's what really ugly corruption ends up looking like, because now you're in a spot where you go, what do you do with that? What does the agent do then? they're SOL, as my dad would like to say.
Wow.
They can't do anything about it because prosecution is done by DOJ, investigation is done by FBI. You have to have them. They work together, but they're not the same agencies, and they could stop either way. Or you got somebody in the FBI that just says, "Hey, we're not going to approve you opening that case." That's really interesting, but we're not going to do it. We're not going to put our resources on that. So all of these things are questions that should be asked and answered, and maybe Bongino's in a position to do so. Kash Patel theoretically could be, but again, the director is kind of high-level management, CEO, vision, plan. The nuts and bolts of it has to be done by the number 2 and the number 3. Those are the people that actually carry out the marching orders. And then they have to be picked up and accurately conveyed. And what I've been told by people who are senior, folks that are running around in the Hoover building right now is that every single directive that comes down from Donald Trump and gets handed down through the DOJ and then get handed over to the FBI, they're looking for loopholes. They're trying to find a way to subvert it. We were told they were all going to have to report and work in person, right? You remember that?
Yep.
All right, listen to this one. This is a great example of how corruption looks at the base level. Donald Trump signs an executive order and says work from home is no longer authorized. You're no longer allowed to telework, right? Members of the FBI's Office of General Counsel took that and they said, well, telework means working from a different geographic location than where you're assigned to work. We don't do that. We do remote work. Remote work means that you're working from home, but you could drive into the office, but you don't have to. Okay, so remote work was not canceled by the executive order. So everyone is still allowed to work from home because they're remote working, not teleworking, even though functionally you and I would look at that and know they mean the same thing. And that's the kind of thing you're up against, that every word must be in line, every order must be properly looked at, and then you have to have basically spies, or you have to have sources within your own agency that are looking for those who are at the lower levels trying to subvert the action plan. And so this is a 100%, it's two things. It is it's the invasion, the counterinsurgency, like we talked about with Afghanistan or going in to take over France in World War II. But it's also a hostile takeover of a business. And so you're doing two things. You're winning hearts and minds of the people that work inside the Bureau and letting them know, look, you signed up to defend the Constitution. We want to do that. We don't want to come for your job. We just want you to do your job the way we say. And we're going to do it in a way that's honorable and ethical and legally and moral and so on. And you got to get them on board with that. And then you also got to go find the people that are trying to subvert that action and get rid of them. So this is a really big problem. And the worst thing is the FBI is the teeth in the attack dog that is the DOJ. If the state, the federal government was going to come for you, it would come in the form of one of the teeth from the DOJ. It would either be the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, the United States Marshal Service. That is the action arm that goes out and grabs people. By and large, that's almost all of it. So these are the sharpest and most dangerous teeth.
You are discouraging me. So
I know it. I wake up every day like this.
It's funny you just mentioned the enforcement arm. With all these court orders that say Trump's got to do this and there's a restriction or TRO or anything like that, if they decide, if for some reason, he says, I'm not going to follow it, what can the judge do? He's going to call the U.S. Marshal's Office, who is under the auspices of the DOJ. How would they possibly enforce a contempt order when they don't control any of the agencies that would enforce a contempt order?
Yeah, they wouldn't. That would be a real constitutional crisis. I mean, that's literally what it is. And Andrew Jackson actually put them to a decision for that ship back in the day. This is a historically relevant thing. What I think is problematic, if you go back and read Article 3 and understand how the courts are actually established, they're established from time to time by Congress. That means that it seems like they're transient. The only court that we know, it's not called the Supreme Court, it's called a Supreme Court. When you read the language, they actually talk about a single court that is basically the one court in the land, that is the federal court, and then subordinate courts that exist, right? The idea that you'd have a district court for somebody that's representing, let's say, a small part of Texas, which is still a big part of America, but if you had that thing, that judge should not be issuing nationwide injunctions. No. That's absurd. And so the idea that you'd have these lower courts trying to slow down the chief executive officer of the United States, it's crazy. And I kind of hope that they ignore some of these things and just say, yeah, look, when it gets to the Supreme Court, we're going to hold what they say. Right. But until then, you're a subordinate court. You're an inferior court, which is the word that actually comes from the language of the Constitution. Right. Inferior courts. How does an inferior court have superiority over the executive of the United States in Article 2?
They don't.
This is that's where they shouldn't, and I agree with you. And I think that that's more and more what people are starting to line up. The lawfare that's gone out there is pretty intense. The only thing that I see that's been kind of fun about this is I've watched Donald Trump sign, hundreds of executive orders.
Yeah.
And so he's tying up all the resources on the political left and all the money going after filing all these cases, and they only can take so many. So he's sending everything through, and if they don't like it and they don't like the TRO, he can go and sign another one that has slightly different language, and he could do it again. And now they're doing that, and that actually is useful. But at the end of the day, what it is, it's bad for America. It's bad for this country to look down the barrel of whenever somebody new gets into office, we're just going to play shenanigans in the court and try to tie up the executive from doing the thing that the American people said.
Yeah, I mean, we all voted. So, question for you. There was a really long X post that I read, and the guy was anonymous. I think he was anonymous, and so I can't put too much credence in it. So when Ashley said we'd be talking to you, I said, perfect question for him. Do these Epstein files even exist? This guy was saying something about, like you mentioned, something sentient, and there's a vault downstairs someplace in one of these buildings, and that's where the files are, and it's guarded. It sounded like something out of a James Bond movie, and I'm like, this is crazy. And why wouldn't the Attorney General have access to this vault? Does that sound nuts? Are they even there?
So we heard two things, and I think we might be conflating two stories. One story, which my friend Garrett O'Boyle actually pushed out and heard from sources inside the Bureau, is that there was a independent, hardwired, air-gapped system that were like confidential files that were being kept by the deputy director. The deputy director's name was Paul Abate previously, and he ran the FBI while Chris Wray was there after the guy who was, what was his name? David. Now I can't think of his name. Bornstein. Bornstein was there. No, not Bornstein. That's a different guy. All right, so I'll think of it in a second. But the Paul Abate, who's gone in front of Congress and was very kind of contemptible. He doesn't really like people there. Paul Abate ran the FBI like it was his personal toy. He was also very woke. He had a lot of sentiments towards BLM, and he was obviously like leaning aggressively towards the left and pro FBI more than anything else. Like he wanted to protect the Bureau. Supposedly, he had a file room that was full of like hardwired and air-gapped computers where they stored files. I can't confirm or deny that. It doesn't really matter. That's not where the Epstein files would be. The Epstein files were prosecutable case files. So they would have to be on a system that's known as Sentinel. Sentinel is just the brand name of the computer program that the FBI created to run files and cases. And they have it on the enclave that is classified up to and including secret. So secret and no foreign is usually enough for almost every case you're dealing with. They can store stuff on the top secret server. They have that access as well. But the idea is that all the case files would be there, and then there would be some physical evidence. And it was probably stored in New York, from what I understand. And they have that. And then they have electronic evidence, whether they're like video files and things like that.
Right.
And that's another file system, but they do this process called Elsher. And so you can have all of these things stored. And theoretically, anything digitized would be accessible. Even photos of the evidence would be accessible from any field office as long as you had the authorization to view the case file.
Right.
They can restrict and limit that. But the deputy director, the director, the people who are the case managers, the people running it, the people that are authorized to add things to it, the analysts that are involved, any of the investigative resources, the supervisors and so on, the legal team that's dealing with it, and then eventually when they actually put it out to the prosecutors, they should all be able to see all this stuff. So it's not just that they should have it. It should be prolifically available in FBI servers. And these things are made so that you can't really delete them, because if you were to delete, let's say, files,
right,
and then I were to go and print that off in a DVD or burn it off in a DVD and bring it to the attorneys to do prosecution, I burn a second copy off for the defense. Because if you're the FBI and you're doing prosecution, you're doing a criminal case on somebody that's involved in moving around, as you said, illicit goods and personage, and you're doing things that are hurting people, it's really, really important that they also get their constitutional due process, that they get the right to defend themselves. That's what they're supposed to do. And if you're in the FBI, if you're part of the DOJ, Bill Shipley says this. He was a J6 attorney. He said that the job of the government is not to choose an outcome. The job of the government is to make sure the process is fair.
Right.
And whether you get a conviction or an acquittal is irrelevant as long as you bring honest information, you put it in front of the jury, and then it's out of your hands. If you're trying to pick winners and losers, you are the loser because you violated your actual duty and responsibility to the American people. And so there's no reason they shouldn't have these files. It's insane to me, even the way they were talking about them. And all that was really weird too. Like I said, paperwork and trucks full of paper like this. That seemed like it was like what my dad would call theater of the mind. He was in radio for many years. And so you're creating this image of like, oh, there's the files. There's so many of them. I tell people it's like Zoolander. There was Owen Wilson and there's Ben Stiller, and they're sitting there with a hammer and they're trying to break into the computer because the files are in the computer. They're actually in a cloud server. So it's crazy to think that they were not accessible from anywhere. You don't have to go to New York to get them. You might have to go there to get the physical evidence. But yeah, there's no reason that there shouldn't be files. There's no reason that they should show them to everybody. And at the end of the day, I don't think you need to see them. If you saw arrests and you saw prosecutions, that'd be good enough for you. I imagine it's good enough for me.
Yeah.
I don't need to see what's in there. I just need to see action.
I don't need to see ugly pictures and what they've done to people. None of that matters to me. I don't even know how a jury can sit through it. But when the whole thing, when she had said on Hannity of all places that somebody else told her that this is where, I'm like, what do you mean somebody else? Is there nobody that
she used the word sources? She said
sources.
A source inside the FBI. Look, the FBI works for the DOJ.
An employee.
When I was working in the bureau in the Albuquerque field office, I used to get emails from the Associate Attorney General for Administration. They would send them directly to us. The people at the highest levels of the DOJ can send out FBI all emails, and we all get them. Right. So if you don't need sources inside an agency that works for you, there may be an indirect report, but they are definitely reporting to you at the end of the day. That's not a good way to look.
Yeah, exactly. So I could talk to you literally because I love law enforcement stuff for an hour, but I know you're busy. So let me close with a couple questions about something that I know a lot of people have asked. What in the hell is going on with the President Trump's assassination attempt? It was mid-July, July 13th, and here it is, almost March 13th, and we still think this guy didn't have anybody helping him, no communications. We saw pictures of his cell phone. What's going on with that?
Isn't it interesting that the most interesting stuff where you see malfeasance and you see some sort of like high level criminality, but the narrative would favor something in the Donald Trump's camp, we suddenly don't hear about it ever again.
Right.
When it doesn't move along the favored leftist sort of narrative, then it suddenly just disappears. I don't know the answer to that. I didn't work out there. I don't know very many people that work in PA. What I do know is this. I just watch media, and I do a lot of meta-analysis. Half of what I do every day is seeing what the media is saying and looking at the spin. And what are we being spun? If Barack Obama, as a former president, had been shot at, not even running for office, if he'd been shot at in Washington, D.C., we'd still be hearing about it. If that happened in July of last year. No doubt in my mind. It would be something that they would remind us every single day that some dirty, ugly, horrible person tried to do something terrible to our favorite guy in the world.
Right.
But because it was Donald Trump, it's suddenly acceptable. Not once, but twice. And are there a bunch of questions? I have less questions about what happened with Thomas Crooks than I do about what's going on with the ongoing prosecution of Ryan Routh, the second guy. Because that guy was in Ukraine and he was doing a bunch of other wild stuff and he's all over the place. And it looks like he was involved in some NGOs and maybe recruiting, fighters out of Afghanistan, which is pretty wild, and trying to bring them into an active war zone. And you don't do that without a lot of blessings from the United States intelligence community or military intelligence or both, and special operations units going in or cutouts or whatever. Like there was some real shady stuff happening with that guy. Do we know what it is yet? I don't.
And
but
he's
I can
alive.
look at it and go,
unlike Crooks, he's still alive.
Correct.
So they should be able to talk to him.
Right. The Crooks story, what I think happened with the Crooks story, and it's hard to dissuade me otherwise, that wasn't a very difficult thing for him to do. Like the shot wasn't crazy. It wasn't difficult. The fact that he missed is a miracle. I think God reached down and saved a man and gave him another lease on life. I think he saved America, and honestly, he saved the world from a very, very dark spiral. Because if something bad had happened on that day, if we'd seen a real assassination, it would have been probably one of the worst things that could have ever happened in American politics because of what it represented. Truly, truly awful. So I think we dodged a bullet as a nation, and the left and the right both did. Right. But I think what it exposed was something that I've been calling the myth of competency. Everybody has this idea that the Secret Service, basically, once they put a Secret Service protective detail on, that you have this invisible force field and nobody can come and stop you and nobody can hurt you. And that is not the case. Ronald Reagan was shot while he was in office, and that was in my lifetime, right? There have been people who have been under the protection. There were attempts on Obama. There were people that made it through the door of the White House and were running through, the halls of the White House. Now, Obama wasn't there at the time, but the fact of the matter is it's not an impenetrable force field. Right. It just generally is highly competent. But when they go on the road, especially when they're using like subcontractors or they're grabbing like TDY agents coming out of Homeland Security, you get a totally different animal there. I've worked with Secret Service in D.C. They're highly buttoned up. They're very comfortable. That's their home field advantage. They know all the distance. They know the windage flags. They know where to look. They know what to see and what's going on. But I don't think they know that in a small field in Butler, PA, and whether it was intentional or whether it was accidental, and that should be clearly investigated. I think they will eventually get to an answer on that. It sounds like it was a little bit of both. What we do know is that there was a bigger hole than there should have been, and that should not have been, because that shot was not difficult at 130 or 150. No. That's not a 200 yards. Is not a difficult shot with that rifle. So all of that is really bad news.
And then the thing that happened at the golf course, I was wondering why nobody was sweeping the perimeter. I mean, how did he just lay there in the bushes? How did he know he'd be golfing that day? I mean,
that's a bigger question than anything else. Why? How do you know he's going to be golfing? And look, if the guy was involved in doing some survey, there's ways you could do it, but not alone. There's no way that you're watching for a motorcade, seeing it depart, getting yourself in a position when apparently he was there for 12 plus hours. Now, maybe he's a mentally lunatic guy. Maybe he's just mentally unfit, and he's been talked into this by people who did have actionable intel. But as I said, the connection overseas and the fact that he was traveling back and forth, how do you end up recruiting foreign fighters in Ukraine when you're a homeless guy, or your house doesn't even have the bills paid out in Hawaii, and you're also from North Carolina? You shouldn't be able to own a weapon because of your felony background, but somehow you managed to get access to one. All of this stuff is a little bit shady, and he didn't seem like he had the wherewithal to do any of that. So for me, the second attempt was much scarier, and I actually will say God bless the Secret Service agents that decided to be proactive and actually pull a trigger on that one, because that was a really big deal. It is a really hard thing to draw your weapon and know that you're about to basically be a headline, and you're basically going to be investigated for every single thing you've done all day up until this point, and for everything you do after the fact, because you've now decided to engage in a law enforcement shooting.
Wow.
That's a hard thing to do. If you've ever drawn your weapon in the line of duty, there's a million thoughts that go through your head, and most of them are not the ones you're not supposed to have. They're not like, am I doing the right thing? And is this person, am I going to survive this? It's usually like, whoa, I wonder what kind of policies I'm going to be breaking that I don't know about. I wonder, if my qualification got properly, like all the dumbest things happen. I wonder if my agency is politically going to back the move that I decided to make, even though there should be no politics at all. And so God bless the guy or gal who did that. I think it was a guy. I'm a little bit concerned that they didn't hit the person, because they didn't hit him, and it was apparently a very, very close shot. But if you've ever seen people try to shoot...
The picture they showed, it looked like he had some sort of not Kevlar, but he had something where he was shooting in between, so maybe...
It was a backpack full of tile, is what we were told.
Yeah.
So I had a buddy who was out of the Miami office that was letting me know kind of the background on this stuff. Apparently a real disaster. Again, when you see most people train to shoot on a flat range with just a paper target, and that's the only thing they've ever done. Very few, even federal agents, get a chance to do what's called force on force, where you have like an airsoft gun or a simunition gun, and you go out there and you train, you look at another person, and you're working that way. So force on force is really critical to break some bad habits. But yeah, like you're looking at a guy, you see him there, it looks like he might have a rifle, and then he's standing behind some piece of tile in a backpack on a chain link fence surrounded by bushes. All of those things, they come into play. I don't want to criticize someone from not being in that situation. I'm glad they made the decision they did, because it obviously forced the action, which probably ended up saving some lives.
Right.
But all of those things, my questions are there is like, what is that? And they're still prosecuting this guy. I mean, we are going to eventually see a prosecution. It's starting to come out. It just seems like it should be the news every day, and it's not. So I agree with you on that.
So in closing, tell me, what's next? What are you looking for as Bongino gets there? What are you looking for as Pam Bondi and Cash start, getting in there for a period of time? What is going to tell you they're succeeding, and what is going to tell you that they're having some problems?
Momentum is going to be the word that I'm looking for. When I was, I remember I had a night one time, my buddy and I stayed up too late, and we had too much whiskey, and we had to do a wedding. We were helping out with a wedding the next day. We woke up, we're both hungover, and we're looking at each other. Neither of us know what needs to be done, but there's a lot of stuff. We had to go move chairs and tables. Sure. And he looks at me silently for about 90 seconds. And then he just yelled the word at me, something. and that's what we needed to do. We needed to do something. We need to start momentum so you can get momentum. Movement is going to beget more movement. And so when Dan gets in, he needs to start moving immediately. They don't always have to be the right action. They have to be decisive and some action. So they don't have to be perfect, but they have to be reasonable, and they have to be moving forward with this plan. And like I said, it needs to be decapitating some of this corruption that exists in the management structure, and most of it is a problem. Whether they agree with it or not, they all said yes when they should have said no, or maybe, and that didn't happen. So a lot of heads need to roll there, unfortunately. And it's just like, you got to trim that agency aggressively. You need to put your own management in place that is on board. And then you need to protect the agents that are doing the real good work, because there are some. There's no doubt about it. There are decent people in the FBI. I'm friends with a lot of them. Maybe not a lot of them, but I'm friends with some of them. And they're out there doing that work every day. And they're looking for cartel members, and they're going after drugs and gangs, and they're going after trafficking, and they're doing white collar fraud, and they're doing things that have nothing to do with politics. And those people need to be protected so they can do that work. But some of them need to be promoted, probably against their will, so they can come in and run these programs in a way that's apolitical, that is interested in justice, like the way that we think it is, and that they go out there and they do the first thing, the most important thing, prioritizing the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
That was the number one core value when I joined the Bureau. It is no longer. It's the number 8 core value. And things like compassion and respect and integrity are all lifted above it, and fairness and diversity. Those are all more important values according to today's FBI. It needs to go back to the original value, which is that rigorous obedience to the Constitution, defending the Bill of Rights, keeping the American people safe by doing the things that way. And that means that you don't break the law first. So that's how I'll see when they prioritize the right things and they're moving forward every day with momentum. That's how we know.
Kyle, you appear to be in shape, like you're still training, or you're still looking fit. The call comes. Are you answering it, or are you done?
I would have a real hard time doing it. So I would say yes under certain parameters. The answer would be yes if you have a very specific mission and you think I'm the guy to do it. That's the only way I've ever taken any leadership roles. I had a leadership role in the FBI working for my surveillance team. I told my boss, find a new person to cover for me. I'll do it until you find someone better. Kind of like a Starship Troopers, until you find someone better until I'm dead. So if there's a real specific mission that I think I can actually do work on and they think I'm the right guy for it, I wouldn't say no to it per se. I would go because I think this country is worth it. But at the end of the day, I run a podcast at this point. I get to comment on all the shenanigans. Nobody stabs me in the back because I work for me. And that is infinitely preferable than going back into the morass and the swamp of Washington, D.C. and waiting for someone to stab me in the back because someone didn't like what I said on X or Twitter, over the last couple of years. And there's a lot of things I've said that have hurt some feelings. So if that's the case, I don't want to be watching my back if I don't have to be. So I guess it's a maybe. If you
and the thing with that is, in 3 or 4 years, depending on what happens politically, then you got to go back and start all over again because the next person's gonna come in. So I understand exactly what you're saying. Do you know Dan Bongino personally?
I do. Yeah. The first public interview I ever did was sitting down with Dan Bongino in late September of 2022. I took my story to the public that way after being a whistleblower. Wow. So that was my first time going out, and we had, 1 million views over on YouTube or whatever it was. I think we were on Rumble at the time, but we had 1 million views pop out on each one of the episodes. And I think it changed the game when it came to people understanding that not the entire FBI agreed with what the FBI was doing. Yeah. I know other whistleblowers were also inspired to come out. I just knew that I had to take the hit. The most important thing that I lost doing that, and this is something that I can't regain. This is why going back would be hard. I lost my anonymity. I had no social media. I had no public profile. You could Google Kyle Seraphin up until September of 2022, and you would never find anything about me. There's nothing out there. Today you Google, there's a Daily Wire articles, there's Fox News. You can find me left and right. There's 500 plus podcasts I've done. I don't have the luxury of being someone that I can walk through and nobody will know who I am. Everybody in the FBI knows what I am and what I did and why I did it. And some agree and some don't. So walking in with a target on your back is not the most fun thing in the world. Unless I can do it in cowboy boots and an American flag Speedo. I'm not real crazy about it because at least then I have some style and some sass, right?
And a guitar. The hat, the Speedo, and a guitar.
Gun belt. Yeah, I'm a gun belt. I don't play the guitar. I'm not a desperado guy, but I'll do a gun belt and I'll do knee-high boots and some either Ranger panties or something with an American flag on there that's tight and uncomfortable for everyone to look at. Because you know what? If it's weird for me, it should be weird for you too.
Well, Kyle, everybody can see on the bottom, on the lower third, your X/Twitter handle. How do they get to your podcast?
They can find it on YouTube very easily. We're at Kyle Seraphin there, and we've actually been sort of unleashed, so people are starting to find it there. They can also find it on Rumble. It's rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. I just use my name everywhere, so it's real easy. It's the Kyle Seraphin Show over on Spotify if they want to go look for that, or Apple or iTunes or anything. It's always Kyle Seraphin. If you type in my name on any of the places where you might look, that's how you find me.
Well, thank you very much for taking what ended up being twice the amount of time I thought we'd go. But like I told you, I start talking to military guys and law enforcement guys. I'm like a sponge. I'm like, just bring it. Just keep talking.
I appreciate the time.
Thank you very, very much.
No, it was nice meeting you, Barry.
Many of you that watch my show understand that I've been involved in real estate for over 25 years. So I know this to be an actual problem. Did you know scammers can literally steal your home right out from under you? The FBI calls it house stealing, and it's a growing real estate scam targeting American homeowners. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee, and file it with your local recorder's office. And just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. Then they can take out loans and mortgages using your equity as collateral, or even sell the property behind your back, and you won't even know it's happening until you start getting collection or foreclosure notices. So let me ask you, when was the last time you checked your home title? Well, if you're like me and other people, the answer is never. And that's exactly what scammers are counting on. That's why I trust Home Title Lock. Their $1 million triple lock protection helps keep your home and equity safe. Here's what you get: immediate 24/7 monitoring of your property, urgent alerts if there are any changes, and if fraud should happen, their US-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title at no additional cost. And here's the best part: I've teamed up with Home Title Lock to give you a free title history report, so you can find out if you're already a victim, and we're going to give you access to your own personal title expert, a $250 value just for signing up. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and use my promo code Barry250, or click on the link in the description. That's HomeTitleLock.com, the promo code Barry250, to get the protection and peace of mind that you deserve. All right, everybody. Yeah, Kyle is a bundle of energy. He is like the Energizer Buddy on steroids. And on top of all that, he knows his stuff. And literally, I mean, usually interviews might go 15 or 20 minutes. I was just soaking it in. I only saw one person. I saw one person who said, "Oh, it's too long." Well, if it's too long, there's a remedy for that, you know. Just saying. But for the rest of you, I could have gone on. Obviously, I didn't talk about JFK. There's just so much more stuff that I could have went with, and it's just, I was absolutely blown away. And I just want to say thank you, Ashley, because at first I was like, yeah, former FBI whistleblower, and as I was talking to him, as you saw, he just blew me away. I mean, I could have asked a question and clicked off and just sat back and keep going, tell me some more. And there was just so many nuggets in there and what he was saying. Some of you guys may have to go ahead and rewind it or watch it again tomorrow, just that segment. It starts off at about the 58-minute mark, I think, is when I started talking to him. So if you want to jot that down, it's at the 58-minute mark. 58-minute marker. Because the terms, the terminology, and then he and I, as we talked before the interview, he understood that there may not be many law enforcement people here, so he tried his best not to go with so many acronyms and APD, G5. He broke it down so we could understand. And early in the interview, I could tell some people thought it was going to be a Pam Bondi bashing thing, or it was going to be a Pam Bondi cheerleading thing, and it was neither of those. It was pure fact. Here's what happened. Here's what should have happened, in his opinion. Here's what they need to do next. And I loved how he compared it to, storming a beach. Be aggressive. Take as much land as possible and then hold that land while people are coming up behind you. And I didn't know that the most important person at the FBI is the deputy director. The director goes out and shakes hands, kisses babies, and basically is out there in the face of things. And it's the deputy director that actually runs things. So, man, I may have to watch it again. And I was the one talking to him. So I just loved it. Absolutely loved it. Ashley, thank you very much. When people have that kind of energy and that kind of information, and they combine that energy with information, it makes for such a great interview, because you can't surprise them, and you can prompt them, and they're gonna go. The only thing that I think you guys heard, was about the first assassination attempt, where there might be some operational silence kind of going on there, because he didn't want to go too deep into that one. He talked a little bit more about the second one because that guy's still alive. But the first one, sounds like there's some really shady stuff going on. Wow. All right, so it's 10:30. Don't want to keep you guys here too late. So let's get into the 10.
Here's the big finish. 10 stories that you just gotta hear. Number 10.
Trump, and I keep thinking, Trump, the Trump Casino in Atlantic City. That used to be the big casino. You drove right into Atlantic City, and there was that big casino. It's gone. The Trump University, it's gone. Trump shuttle, we haven't taken that lately, have we? That's gone. This idea that things will turn out is right out of Chauncey Gardner in Being There. He's telling the president, Jack Warren, don't worry, we're gonna plant in the spring and we're going to sow in the fall and everything's going to be great. It isn't going to be great. This is a trend line. This is an economic trend line in the market. And it's going to be worse in the next couple of days and worse after that because he has started a trade war that we're going to lose.
Okay, so a couple things is what he just said. He mentioned the casino, he mentioned shuttle, and he mentioned Trump University. But he didn't mention the golf courses, the real estate buildings, the many, many, many successes, because people like him, people like that on MSNBC, number one, they only focus on failure, and they don't understand that people like Trump, an entrepreneurial spirit, of course you're going to fail. It's not about the failures, it's about making it on the wins. Sometimes, yes, you're going to fall flat on your face. The thing that most liberals don't understand, because they're sucking up to the government, is your failures don't define you. Your successes define you. And then you get back up, and then you go for another win. At the end of the day, when they're putting you in the dirt, you're hoping that when they do a summation on your life, it's like, wow, he did this much to win, and he had some losses, but he has this many wins. I'm pretty sure every single person on MSNBC, without a single individual, would gladly trade their bank account for Donald Trump's account. And I don't mean people are coveting money. I'm talking about in terms of keeping score. Remember, Chris Matthews got fired from MSNBC. And he just got that wrong because the tariffs obviously worked. Canada backed down. Sorry, Chris, you lose.
9.
We've got to talk about the price of eggs. The Department of Justice launching an antitrust investigation now into major egg producers. As prices remain high, the average cost of a dozen eggs around $7 this month compared to roughly $4 in December. By the way, I've seen it even higher than $7, much higher, by the way. Egg prices are up 53% year over year. So, Secretary, you announced a $1 billion investment to curb bird flu. You rolled out a 5-part plan to reduce prices of eggs. They include deregulating production, importing some eggs, up to 100 million eggs from other countries, securing barns to reduce disease, and repopulating culled birds. How will you carry this out? Assess the situation for us and the timeline that you expect for some price release on eggs.
Before she talks about that, in terms of securing the barns, making sure there aren't guys coming over trying to kill the chickens. That would be a good way to secure it. Let the chickens keep laying eggs. They had to grow back after 100 million of them were killed. So now as you're securing all this stuff, hire some security to watch it's not just the foxes in the hen house. There's nefarious guys in the hen house.
Well, I actually come with some good news today, and it's likely that the prices will go back up. We're moving into the highest price egg season without avian bird flu, and that's because Easter's right around the corner. But recently, I think just a couple of days ago, the price of eggs is coming down, and we believe that is in reaction. The market has reacted to our plan that we rolled out on February 26th, just about, a week and a half ago, that the prices have come down on average about $1.85 per dozen eggs. So we're seeing some relief. We've got a lot.
I bet you didn't hear that on MSNBC or CNN or any of those stations. You see, they talked about the egg prices being high, and now that the egg prices are coming down, they're not telling people. again, like I said earlier, there's not much good on the Democrat side. Nothing.
Long way to go. Listen, combating the avian bird flu is not something that we can do overnight. It is a long-term effort. But the Biden administration, this was a major problem that they had 2 years ago. They talked about it. They wrote some plans about it, and then nothing ever happened. So I think that it's really important to know, and for your viewers, that we are on it. We have a major plan we've rolled out. As you mentioned, it's got 5 different points. But the really piece of, at least right now today, good news is that the price of eggs seem to be coming down. And $1.85 per carton is not insignificant, but we've got a long way to go.
Well, that's way down from where it was, though. $1.85
It
is actually incredible. But this is an issue that hits consumers as well as corporations because there's an input cost here. You need eggs to make so many other things. And so it's not just consumers buying a dozen eggs, it's companies having to spend on the producer level. And then, you know, you go into restaurants, you see a sign, oh, sorry, if you order an omelet, you'll have to pay an extra $2 or something.
Maybe in New York. Maybe because you're getting squeezed everywhere else. But Robin and I went out to breakfast this past weekend. There was no sign. There was nothing inside that said, oh, by the way, it's going to cost you a couple bucks more. No. That must be in New York or Washington. Restaurants were packed. We had to go to 2 different ones to get a seat and something. Everybody was eating.
That's exactly right. Well, and also, Maria, you know, the president's vision and what we're working so hard to do is to take the American dream to every corner of this country, but especially those that have been forgotten, right, under previous administrations. Yeah. And so eggs are a very inexpensive, very nutritious source of protein. So now we're kind of getting into the nutrition side. But listen, when you've got a major obesity epidemic in this country, especially amongst those at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder, right, then you have a SNAP program, which is under USDA. That's the food stamp program that's basically covering and paying with taxpayer dollars sugary drinks and candy. You have a massive health epidemic. So that it isn't just the input of eggs and how important eggs are for all of us, right? I've got 4 teenagers. I'm feeding a big family every single day. Eggs are a big part of that. But for me, too, it's much bigger than that. It's how do we ensure that those with the least among us have the best access to be able to feed their family and raise healthy, strong kids for the next generation. So this is a much bigger policy issue than just, you know, we got to fix avian bird flu. We do. We've got to make sure our egg layers and our poultry producers can thrive in America. We do. But we also have to make sure that this nutritious food is available for all Americans. And eggs are a big, big part of that.
Number 8.
All right, let's get some Democratic reaction to all the things that are unfolding up on Capitol Hill. Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas is joining us here in the Situation Room.
I knew. I said I wasn't going to talk about Jasmine anymore. I was going to let it go. But tomorrow, Ashley has an interview set up with me with her opponent. And I got a lot of questions for him as well. But this woman, her elevator don't go all the way to the top. And as long as these people in the media allow her to come on television and just lie, it hurts their credibility. Wolf Blitzer is about to let this woman basically vomit on him, and he doesn't call her on it.
Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. You heard the House Speaker. I assume you heard what he said. He's basically blaming the Democrats, people like you, if this continuing resolution is defeated in the House later today.
Listen, he can't blame me for not wanting to be his doormat or for the Democrats not wanting to be their doormat. I mean, all we consistently hear from them is they have this mandate that the American people gave them. Well, I am saying that I have a mandate from my district, and it does not involve cutting Medicaid, cutting Medicare, and if
So you're telling the people in your district that the Republicans are cutting Medicaid and Medicare. Is that what you're saying? Hey, Wolf, you couldn't go back and have a piece ready and say, excuse me, Jasmine, hold on a second. My producer is saying, yeah, you're full of crap. No, you couldn't do that? Why couldn't you? I would have said, hey, save that for MSNBC. We all know that's not true. But they don't say it. They just let them throw up all over them.
We're going to just focus on this continuing resolution. Let's talk about it, because I know you just talked to my other colleague from Texas, and he was boasting about the increase in pay for certain service members while not talking about the fact that those that have already served our country, our veterans, that they're going to lose so much of their care. We know that right now they're looking to cut close to 80,000 people from the Veterans Affairs.
You see how she conflated that? Very smoothly conflated cutting excess employees as to being the same as cutting benefits. That is a shrewd trick by the Democrats. Oh, you're going to be cutting waste. You're going to be cutting people who, we don't need this much staff. Well, that's the same as cutting benefits, which is a complete lie. And again, you call yourself a news person, and you sit up there and let her just completely lie.
And then in addition to that, in this CR, all the money for bills that we've passed before, specifically that extra money that we put in for the toxic burn pits, they want to take that out. So it should not be a either or when it comes to those that have served our country or those that are willing to serve our country. And right now they're pitting them against one another. We see as they've decided they're not going to do any more town halls. So I don't know if Tony even knows what his constituents want, that they are consistently getting railed against because of the way that they're treating veterans by making sure that these firings, they're not standing up for the people. They're not standing up for the House. So no, I'm not going to vote for the continuing resolution. The Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. If they want to get their draconian stuff passed that's going to hurt my constituents, they're going to do it by themselves.
And what's very worrisome is that so many veterans who work in federal government agencies are now being fired for various reasons as a result.
Approximately 1/3 of our workforce for the federal government, they're veterans.
Veterans, and we want to make sure those veterans are protected by all means.
Number.
Why you gotta lie? I just don't understand. Why do you have to lie? If what you're selling is so good, why do you have to lie about it? See, that's the thing I would always confront AOC or Miss Cue Ball, the other one. If what your party is doing is so good, why would you lie about it? Why can't you just be honest? Well, I guess what would you say? Oh, we don't have a platform. All we can do at this point is react to what Donald Trump is doing, because we don't have anything that we can present to you as a plan for anything. What's your plan for the border? What's your plan for eggs? Since you made it a big deal, what's your plan for anything? Military, what's your plan? We just want to make sure the poor peoples are taken care of.
7.
You've said that this is a difficulty for Republicans. What do you think that Democrats should be doing? When you were talking about covering 95 and 96, how do you think about their potential strategy?
Well, I actually think this is the cornerstone of their strategy for 2025. If you talk to Democrats, they recognize they are in a hole. I mean, the image of the party is probably in a weaker position than at any point since, I think, the 1980s, the Reagan and George H.W. Bush era. But if you...
Whoa. So he just said the Democrats are in such a bad situation that it hasn't been this bad for, 40-something years. So if some people are now beginning to see this and understanding they're in deep trouble, number one, you don't have a leader. None. Number two, there's no message. So if you have no one to lead and no one to lead and what they could talk about, you're pretty much finished as a party. And 2026 isn't that far away. So all you're going to be is opposition. Good luck with that.
Ask Democrats how they think they are going to come back. There is a debate about, within the party, do you fight on every front or do you focus on the economic issues? And I think most Democrats believe their best chance of kind of getting a second look from the public in 2025 is this debate over the budget. This is the first time since that 1995-96 budget when Republicans are explicitly putting two things together in the same budget plans: tax cuts that are aimed primarily at the rich and cuts in healthcare programs, particularly Medicaid, that benefit the middle and working class. I mean, if you look at their tax cuts since then, they've been sugar only. They've kept the spinach far away from it. But here, Democrats, I think, feel they can make the explicit linkage, because the budget will make the explicit linkage, to the argument that Republicans will be cutting Medicaid to fund tax cuts for the wealthy. And I think if you ask them, as I said, how they think they're going to come back, they're probably putting more chips on that number than anything else.
So what you're saying is the only way the Democrats can come back is to lie. That's what you just heard. They need to tell everybody their message is that you're going to lose Medicaid and Medicare. That's all you got. You're talking to this much of the population, and you're lying to that much on top of it. So you're catering to a group of people who don't have the educational wherewithal to understand that you're lying to them. And you think that can carry you to some kind of a win? I've never met anyone whose strategy was, I can lie my way through it. I skipped a number there, bad editing. So I think we're at 6, but I think it says 5. So next.
Number 5.
Oh, okay.
Steve Ratner, we've had this discussion before, too. The United States economy was the envy of the world, but it was incumbent upon Republicans to do no harm. That is a classic Edmund Burke conservative approach. I'm an Edmund Burke conservative, and I have been for 250 years now. But do no harm. And of course, this arrogant notion that the United States could tell the rest of the world, take it or leave it, acting as if this were, 2000 or 2001, where we were the only game in town, it's just not the reality. And so
it's not. Without USAID and billions and billions and billions of American dollars going to, prop up some of these countries, it is indeed true that we are it. And you're starting to see that happen around the world. They're beginning to wig out that they're not getting American dollars anymore. Trump has turned off the spigot, and you're watching England and Germany and all the countries over there, Canada, realize at this point, Mexico, you're not getting American dollars. So what is Joe talking about?
I've been warning of 3 bubbles: the fiscal bubble, which still will explode at some point if Republicans don't get responsible, and that will be the ugliest bubble of all; the crypto bubble that is starting to pop; and of course, the stock market bubble. But as all the analysts that I read of yesterday, and I'd love to get your input, were talking about, it's the back and forth. It's the reckless, the radical policies. It's what J.P. Morgan Chase called extreme policies that Republicans are pushing that actually are leading us down a pathway of this economic chaos that we saw play out in front of our eyes yesterday.
Yeah, Joe, I think your last point is an important one, as well as, of course, the rest of it. Look, they came in, I guess you could say they said what they said they were going to do, but I don't think anybody really nobody expected it was going to be this extreme, that Elon Musk was going to go in there wielding his Doge sledgehammer, smacking away at whatever he felt like, talking.
You got caught. You didn't think it would be, quote, this extreme. But let me show you, when they're talking about extreme, I don't know how many people have explained this to you. This was put up, and a lot of people are talking about it, because in order to understand President Trump when he talks about reciprocal tariffs, let me know if you've seen this before. Here's what Canada tariffs the United States. Canada tariffs 270 on milk, 245% on cheese, 298% on butter, 238 on chicken, and on and on and on. Why is it okay with these people that Canada can slap us with all these kind of tariffs? But as soon as we turn around and slap back, oh my God, what's he doing to our allies? Our allies, what are they doing to us? Why are you not talking about this? How come it's okay for Canada to do it to the United States, but we can't turn around and say, you know what? We see what you're doing to us, so here's what the reciprocal tariff is going to do. Now, we're going to hit you at 270% tariff. We're going to hit you with a 245% tariff. Well, that's exactly what President Trump said today. He told Canada, oh, you want to play ball? Okay, guess what? I'm charging you 250 to 290% tariffs on certain things. And within hours, they completely caved. And the media took Canada's side. Unreal.
Off the cuff about Social Security or this or that. But so the policies they've actually articulated that they're doing are very extreme. But what is really bothering the market as much as anything is uncertainty. You heard a reference in the earlier clip to the earlier guest to animal spirits. Animal spirits was a phrase coined by John Maynard Keynes, and what it really means is that you can have policies, but a lot of what goes on in an economy is how people feel. Are they excited? Are they optimistic? Do they believe it's going to get better? Or are they worried? And in Trump 1.0, whether you liked it or not, at least from the point of view of the business community, it was sort of clear, it was logical, and it was things they liked in terms of tax changes, regulatory changes, and so forth. This administration is all over the place. And one day they're cutting Social Security. The next day they're firing everybody at USAID. And then they're rehiring some because the courts tell them to, or because they realize they can't get the Social Security checks out without these people. And the tariffs go on, the tariffs go off, they get suspended, they get threatened in other places. And this is what business really can't live with, or consumers.
Yeah. No, it's business that you may invest in. You see, it's pretty easy for somehow Tim Cook from Apple decides he's putting $500 billion into the United States. It was a pretty easy decision. It's a pretty easy decision for the shipbuilders and all these different people to go, yeah, we're going to do it here, and we're going to make stuff here because we don't want to pay tariffs. What he's talking about is they got caught with their pants down. These people in the Beltway thought that they could invest in, obviously, it makes a whole lot of sense. If you could invest in a business that was getting tariffed, Canadian business on the stock market that was getting a 270% or 245% or 298%, a Canadian butter company, and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to invest in that because they're tariffing the United States and I can, make some money on it. And now all of a sudden Trump's upsetting the apple cart. Before these people talk, what they should be forced to do. Can I give you disclosure as to what stock I personally own? Because at that point, you could say, oh, you own Canadian butter. You're such a fraud.
Certainty of not knowing what's going to happen. And so you do see consumers cutting back on spending. It fell in January for the first time in a long time. You do see, for example, the deal market, companies buying and selling each other almost at a standstill because nobody knows what the rules of the game are going to be for the companies once they merge. And it's kind of chaos, is another word to put it. And so the stock market sees all that and says, as you just pointed out, it's kind of priced for perfection. It's had a great run. And why are we sitting up here at these high levels when there's all this crazy stuff going on in the world and anything could bring down the economy?
They need to get out of the Beltway. That's the bottom line. You need to get out of the Beltway. You need to talk to actual people. Again, I know I live in a bubble down here in South Florida, but we went to church on Sunday, packed. Now, of course, the God Squad packed every single restaurant within a couple miles of the church. And it was standing, funny, an economy that's so bad, every place that you go to is packed. Packed. Not just like a little bit, I'm talking packed. Ashley and the kids are coming down here this weekend. We got some fun times planned ahead. And she'll be able to tell you. It's like, wait a minute, what is going on down here? That wherever you go, I know we get snowbirds, and this is a time of year wherever, but it's beyond just snowbirds. Everything. It's like it's Trump haven. It literally is. I mean, it's a red state. Obviously, it's a red state. But what's going on in these other states like New York and Washington, D.C., we don't experience that. Things are great down here. And I'm not trying to say that as to make certain people feel bad about where you live, but something must be going on where, Ron DeSantis and what he's doing down here in Florida and how the restaurants and everybody else seems to be doing okay in the so-called bad economy.
Number 3.
And joining us now is Doug Ford, the Premier of Canada's most populous territory, Ontario. And Premier Ford, as we mentioned, President Trump is now saying he is enacting a 50% tariff on steel and aluminum from Canada, which will go into effect tomorrow in response to your actions. What's your reaction?
Well, Anna, first of all, thank you for having me on. I start every interview with saying we love Americans. I love Americans, spent 20 years of my life there, and I know Canadians love Americans and vice versa. In saying that, we will not back down. We will be relentless. I apologize to the American people that President Trump decided to have an unprovoked attack on our country, on families, on jobs, and it's unacceptable. Let's work together. Let's get to the table if he has issues, and let's sort this out. You see the market tumbling. Consumer confidence is down. And if he continues on with this, assembly plants in Michigan will shut down, and around the country, whoever makes autos, and as well as businesses. They're going to hurt. And these pensions, when the market goes down, it's going to affect people's pensions. So I'm not too sure why he continues to attack his closest friends and allies, but we need the American people to speak up. We need those CEOs to actually get a backbone and stand in front of them and tell them this is going to be a disaster. It's mass chaos right now. That's what we need.
How'd that work out? So this morning, he went on MSNBC and said that. And literally a few hours later, he's waving a white flag. So you can't even trust when other countries' leaders go on television. Blah, 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 blah. BS. Absolute BS.
2.
I think it's somewhat callous to tell people who live paycheck to paycheck you can endure a little short-term pain. There are people in this world who aren't billionaires. People who aren't represented maybe in this cabinet and in this administration as much. Look, I think what you are seeing is a response to the chaos and uncertainty.
See, the new narrative dropped. Chaos, chaos, chaos. And understand, she's talking again. You can't expect people who work paycheck to paycheck to, have to incur any pain. I'm sorry. Did she not live through the last 4 years? Did she get teleported onto Earth and she missed the entirety of the Biden presidency? Did she not see what has happened during the Biden presidency? I have a picture on my phone of what gas prices were when Trump left office. What are you talking about, Anna? It wasn't even a little bit of a bump. Everything cost more when Biden got in office. But obviously she forgot all that.
What Donald Trump is doing with these announced trade wars, what he's doing with tariffs, it's almost comical if it didn't have an economic effect. It's like, he puts the tariff in, he puts the tariff out, he puts the tariff in, he puts the tariff out, and then he does the hokey pokey, and he turns us all around. It is absolutely insane, and it is playing. It's also affecting American psyche. It's affecting consumer confidence. If people don't spend as much, people are scared. They feel uncertain. They are nervous. They're looking at the numbers. If you are a state worker with your pension fund and you're looking at these numbers, you are nervous because you're depending on that.
And look, the polls are saying that only 26%.
Number 1.
only reason I bring it and show you these people is because you have to understand how bad it is in the Democrat Party. When you start talking about the hokey pokey on a news program, you've lost. Just understand that. When you put your left foot in, your right foot out, I don't even know the words anymore. I haven't sang that song since I was a kid. And she just sang the hokey pokey on a national news show.
The striking thing, right, is that people who backed him are the ones who thought he'd be good for business, are also the same ones who want predictability. Well, this is not a predictable guy. He's never been a predictable guy. It's not going to be a predictable administration. Now, look, the last president we heard say, hey, there's going to be some short-term disruption while we rebuild the economy was Joe Biden, right? He said, okay, yeah, there's some inflation right now, but don't worry, it'll get better. It did actually get better, but people still felt the pain along the way, and it cost the Democrats a lot of electoral costs.
Because it didn't get better. People were waiting for the gas prices to go down, but they couldn't because he didn't let anybody drill. They have nothing left but lies. Every single one of you know the gas prices, he was selling it to Venezuela and selling it across the world, but we couldn't get cheaper gas. We didn't deserve it. And on top of all that, which none of these people mention, which is why I include them, is none of them mention the bagillions that have been going to all these other countries. Just the fact that that has been clawed back. Just the mere fact that Doge has pulled that money back is driving these people crazy, because at that point, people are looking. It's easy to see, well, you saved $20 billion? And you guys are complaining about that, but these people aren't complaining. They won't even mention it. It's like it doesn't even happen.
College success. Well, I don't know if that's going to cost Donald Trump the same thing. We'll see. His base has always been pretty strong for him. But economic dislocations, I think, is the one thing this White House worries about more than anything. They think that they're going to be fine with things like the Doge chainsaw to the federal government. They think they'll be fine with turning the page on the Ukraine war and siding with Russia over Ukraine. They think they'll be fine with retribution and revenge. But the one thing that concerns them, I think, most is economic dislocation, because that's where his bragging authority has always come from.
Oh, gosh.
We know, for example, what Texas would do.
Right.
They'll use it for vouchers. So
I had to include this bonus clip. This is Randy Weingarten, who she's complaining because, we're going to give the money back to the states. And she's complaining that parents are going to be able to determine where they want their kids to go. And the funky one with the MSNBC glasses over here, you hear what she'll say. They're going to put them in religious schools. Oh, gosh.
They won't give it to the kids who have it now. They'll just give it for vouchers.
Catholic schools, religious schools.
And frankly, what we're seeing in all the programs that are now extant in terms of vouchers, they don't work for kids. They basically go right now. It becomes a tax credit for people who already are sending their kids to private schools. So it's income redistribution.
When you pay your taxes of the town you live in, and the Department of Education or the school system spends that money as they see fit, that's okay. But if the state decides you get the voucher and you get to, decide where you want to send your kids, and you get your own money back, that is somehow wealth redistribution. It's my money, you moron. Oh, wait a second. Here's my money going into the Department of Education. It just goes. Here's the new way where I get a voucher. I get the money back. It's my money. That's not redistribution. That's my money. These people are just insane. Absolutely insane. I want to share something with you. I've told you guys, a number of you, on X and otherwise that this weekend, starting tomorrow night, Ashley and the kids are coming into town. So tomorrow I will have 2 shows. I will have an afternoon show and then I'll have an evening show. And then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I'm only going to have 1, just a day show because the kids are going to be in town. Ashley's going to be here and I can't wait to see them. So I wanted to do a little piece that it was kind of doubles as OMG, my grandson is going to be on this beach. And number 2, OMG, the economy down here is rocking. And you won't see this on MSNBC, but check this out.
Last election, young voters swung toward Trump in a pretty big way. He won nearly half of them. That's up from just a third in 2020. They were motivated by the economy and the border, and Johnny went to spring break in Fort Lauderdale to explore that.
What college did you go to?
FIU.
California University of Pennsylvania.
Grand Valley in Michigan.
Spring break 2025. What is the game plan?
Get blacked out.
I'm hoping to sleep with 10 girls. Have a really good time and remember none of it.
We just went to Senior Frogs. It was really fun. Drinking, clubbing.
How were the guys?
I've made out with, I think, 4 so far.
Do you remember their names?
No. I don't think I even asked their names.
He asked me for the number, and I said, I will not give you my number.
What's the wildest thing you've seen at spring break?
Someone having a threesome inside of the club. People walk around naked.
My boy was talking to a
You've lost a lot of credibility.
Last night, a girl flashed us.
Somebody shook my while I took a shot. Somebody with no legs in a wheelchair holding a sign that says their last dying wish is to see boobs.
So what'd you do?
I walked away. The body!
Oh, is he alive?
I told Ashley, pray for your son and my grandson that he's not around these nuts. But at the same token, look at the money. Look at them. These are college kids. Wow.
What issue facing America is most important to you?
There needs to be hotter guys down here.
The stock market crashing.
Protecting the dogs and the cats and the squirrels. The drinking age being too high. Ooh, that's a good one.
You guys are so smart.
Tell me what Donald Trump has been doing.
He's been doing president things. He's been getting his tan on, I'll say that.
Bruh, he was harassing that that dude at the meeting. I forgot his name, the president of Ukraine, bruh.
You don't have the cards right now.
He's trying to take Canada, but Justin Trudeau.
His cabinet is full of terrorists, prostitutes, bad people.
Who are these people that you're talking about?
No, I don't know that part of it.
I made it up. The government spent $8 million to make mice transgender. Why'd they do that? They want the mice to I mean, I don't know.
Why are we worried about mice's gender? Mice don't have a brain.
How much money would it cost you to become transgender?
If you give me $1 million, maybe.
What would your name be?
My nickname, Mikey.
Mikey, thank you very much for being here.
The Democrats also want to put men in women's sports. They're okay with that.
No, absolutely not.
So you don't want to be in the women's locker room?
Bro. Now you got me.
What is your definition of men?
They have a...
I think you're being kind of disrespectful when you ask that question.
You are a rude, terrible person.
Who is your favorite Democrat?
None of them. I would say Eminem.
Is Mark Cuban a Democrat?
Kendrick Lamar. My favorite Democrat, my mom.
Mine too.
We're also sending a lot of money to Ukraine. Where is Ukraine?
Ukraine. Don't make me sound stupid. It's a country that is...
It's in the world.
I don't know. I actually don't know.
I don't know. I simply don't know.
What has Zelensky been up to?
I don't even know who that is. No idea. I don't know who that is.
Who's Zelensky? I don't even know who that is.
Sounds like a nice pasta.
Zelensky.
Zelensky.
He's just taking our f***ing money.
Show me the money!
What do you want to tell Jesse Waters on Fox News?
Come down to spring break. Spring break.
Spring break, bro, 2025. If you're not in Fort Lauderdale, where the are you at?
they'll be here this weekend. And I showed Ashley that this morning, and I'm like, oh boy, we're gonna have to put like chips in their arms or something. So come back to the house. Oh, anyway, that aired on Fox Primetime. That aired on Jesse Waters' show. So some of you guys who thought it was bad, I'm sorry. It was funny. It's meant to be a joke. I'm sorry if it offended you. But I figured, you know what, if it could air on Jesse Waters at prime time, then we could pretty much run it at 11 o'clock at night. So that's what I have to look forward to this weekend. Basically playing security guard. Have your butt in the house by 10 o'clock. You ain't going nowhere. Oh, man. Stay inside, Barry. Yeah, really. Shock collars. Oh, that's the best one. Have to get them those shock collars for sure. It's crazy. What's scary about that is how much those kids didn't know. Who's Zelensky? Oh, who's Zelensky? My goodness. Those are our future world leaders. That's who's going to be leading the country very soon. Oh boy. Hey, if you'd like to join 15,000 plus fellow patriots on X in our private X/Twitter group, go to fanfareshop.org/group. Just put in that URL in your browser. It'll take you right to our private group on X. Love to see you there. Let's share some content. And if you'd like to win a hoodie, or rather if you'd like to enter to win a hoodie, go to fanfareshop.org, fanfareshop.org, and register to win a Trump hoodie.
Welcome back to Fanfare with Barry Cunningham.
Wow, I almost forgot to give out the hoodies. So let me do the super chats first because it doesn't look like there's a whole many, and then we'll do the hoodies. Right? I almost forgot about that. All right, Gasworks, thank you very, very, very much. Thank you. You rock. Miss you all. It's been so busy. Love all, Barry and crew. Keep up the great work. Been keeping up on the replays. Thank you very much. That's really awesome of you. Thank you very, very much. Let's see here. What do we got? Trying to get it so I can see it better without it going crazy on me here. Hold on. Let me just adjust this and pull this here so I can make it bigger without it going crazy. All right. So, Edward Zadosky, thank you very much. Beverly Litton, I understand Weston's that reruns of the Trump show, The Apprentice, will be on air. Okay. Kenneth Vinzant, how does Schumer have say when we are the majority? Because he needs 60 votes. That's why. V. Shara, thank you. Fume Drummer, with advance notice of the shredding party, how was the USAID building unlocked? Is Bondi drunk? That's a good question. That is a very good question. How were they allowed to continue doing what they were doing? Since everybody seems to have gotten this email that told everybody what was going on. Doesn't make any sense to me. That is for absolute sure. I'm hoping someone's going to have to answer that and tell us exactly what's going on, because that's a really, really, really big problem. Okay, where was I? Hold on. Let me go ahead. I'm trying to see if I can see. Okay, where is this? Let me go back over here. Barry, is anybody ever going to jail? Yeah. I've been showing you. There have been arrests made. Benedette Salerno, arrested Dems, pool best pick Abrahams or AOC. Stacey Abrams, she ain't going to go to jail. She's going to give somebody up. I guarantee you, she doesn't want to sit in a woman's prison. So that ain't ever going to happen. A lot of these people are going to give up people. Daniel Mann, I wish schools would have applied academic subjects specifically to apply to high finance. This lack of paths has left me in the dust and dropping out. Beverly Litton, think Alcatraz needs to be reopened. Yeah, I could go with that. Art Gardner, this is all theater until people go to jail. There's enough crime to put somebody in jail. There's enough crime, but I think we need to give people the time to get done what they got to do. Again, I'm not in law enforcement, so I can't tell you. Mariana King, thank you. And KRO, thank you. Neo, very awesome show. And info from Kyle. Thank you very much. Claudette Bruley, someone should write a book titled The Day God Saved the World, July 13th. That's a good title. Tim Allred, the truth is simply the truth. It stands on its own and comes from itself, nowhere else. Very well said. Myrna, the Shino, thank you very much. God bless us all. Thank you. And Maga Mama, thank you for another great show and interview. To all of you, you're all the best. Thank you very much. So bear with me. I've got to get the hoodie stuff put together here. Just take me a second. And where are we? And okay, we are ready to go. Let me pull this over here and make it wider so you guys can see. All right, here we go. So we're gonna do the hoodie giveaway right now. Oh, wait a minute. Where's my drum roll sound? Oh, here it is. Okay. All right, the first winner is Shandi Noel Johnson. Shandi Noel Johnson. Number 2, let's go ahead and do it again. Yoli Romero. Yoli Romero. Yoli, you only live once. Yoli Romero. And then John C. Dixon. John C. Dixon, Yoli, have won 3 hoodies. Congratulations. That wasting their mommy's money. All right, everybody. Thank you for tonight. Thank you. Yeah, you only have to register once. Your name goes in the thing, so you don't have to worry. Well, thanks for tuning in for another 3 hours tonight. We will see you tomorrow. I have no idea what the schedule will be till I see it at about 7:30 in the morning. Talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in. Oops, that's the wrong one.
Well, this was...